time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Oh, hello there, everyone. A welcome, one and all pleasant, good Sunday evening. Dissidence is the DueDissidence podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss, here with Russell Dobular, back from summer vacation. I know you missed the last show. I can see you got a nice tan down in the Caribbean, right? Is that where you were?
It was delightful. It was delightful. I spent 2 days, 8 hours one day and 12 hours the next day with German teenagers.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I got to use all the German phrases I picked up from the Cabaret soundtrack.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in all
Willkommen, mein Damen und mein Herren. There's a lot of that.
Is that right? So you were with the German teenagers in New York, though, right? Not in the Caribbean.
Germany.
No,
not in the Caribbean.
So you were not vacationing with German teenagers. You were guiding them around New York City for hire, correct?
All right, listen, man. You think American music has gone to shit? You ain't heard nothing until you've heard German people trying to rap. Holy fuck. On the bus, they were playing German hip hop.
Oh, wow.
That's as bad as you would imagine. Like, imagine how bad that could be. It's that bad, and then worse than you could even dream.
Well, you're biased because obviously your great-grandfather, Menachem Dobular, pioneered Jewish hip-hop. And so there's a little rivalry, right? That's like the East Coast, West Coast gangs, you know what I mean?
He definitely would not have appreciated having his invention taken by Germans.
Germans, yeah, exactly.
Especially them.
That would have been a real bite in the ass.
Of all people, the Germans.
Exactly. But glad you're back. You definitely got some color. We can
say that again. Hey, so test of life. I shouldn't touch buttons on my phone. I definitely deleted a comment from Courtney, and I may have banned her.
You deleted a comment from Courtney and banned Courtney?
By accident. I was trying to close the emojis.
Oy vey.
And I don't know if I banned her.
Hey, Courtney, if you're here, Courtney, come back. That's interesting. Yeah, it's very easy to do by accident.
It was because the emojis were up, and I hit the button to close the emojis.
And you deleted Courtney. Interesting.
All right. Oh boy. I know how to get her back. Hang on.
Yeah, we can get her back. We can get her back in here. Where you just go back into the back end, right?
Yeah, I'm going in now.
All right, we'll see if we did that. We apologize, Courtney, if we did that. It was, of course, an accident. It's a very, very easy mistake to make back here. But thank you guys for being here. 405 strong. What's that look?
I'm just like, yeah, no, she goes under Courtney, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I don't see her in here.
So she's not banned. All right, good.
I don't think I banned her. No.
That's a great look to see in your co-host when you know he's fucking around with the back end of the YouTube and you're about to do something and your co-host just goes,
what?
That's very reassuring. That gives you a lot of confidence.
Maybe I put her in timeout or something.
Maybe. I don't know.
Because she's not, there's no sign of life.
All right.
But I definitely don't see her on the back.
She must have your number, right? You met for coffee? Courtney,
Oh,
get
yeah,
in touch
she
with
does.
Russell. So text
She does.
Russell if he banned you by
Text
accident.
me if I accidentally banned you, but I don't see your name under the list of the banished.
Yeah, all right. So text Russell and we'll fix that if we can. Yeah, I love that. It's a great one. What? Come back here. 429 strong in the chat, folks. Thank you so much for being here. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We have a lot to get to tonight.
She's in timeout, so she should come back
so
in like 10 minutes, right?
5-10 minutes. Okay. All right. Apologize, Courtney. Thank you. All right. So it was in timeout. That's okay. Beautiful. We apologize about that. All righty, folks. So we have a lot to get to tonight. We have some super chats coming in already. Thank you very much for those. Britsman starts us out with $5. Thank you. Be careful sampling Gavin's voice in your theme song. He might slap you with a DMCAAAA. Yeah, we put one in the opening countdown based on your comment, Britsman. That's all right. They can bring it on. I don't know what kind of lawyers they got out there in the Ozarks, but a couple of New York Jew boys that we'll handle them in court, no problem.
We have plenty of lawyers in the family. Don't you worry.
Exactly.
Ruthless. It's just like every Italian guy you don't want to stereotype, but they all have a distant relative in the mafia. You don't want to stereotype with Jews, but we're all related to lawyers.
Yeah, no,
I don't. I don't think I know a Jew that doesn't have a lawyer relative.
Exactly. Sue a restaurant for tainted raccoons out there in Vanguard country. Checked my bank account. No disrespect to Kansas City, obviously. Nick, our friend from RBN's from Kansas City. We jest. Check my bank account.
Kansas City, here I come.
Ruthless criticism, thanks for the $5. Check my bank account. You're off the hook today. Oh, what happened? They cut your pay already at the new job? Mostly, but I reserve the right to borrow from my own savings. All right. Interesting, my friend.
I found out about his politics.
Yeah, exactly. China Shill, time to break out my little red checkbook. I like that. That's funny. Good one, China Shill, and thank you for the $2. Patrick Donahue gives us some euros before bed. Thank you, Patrick Donahue. We appreciate that. We have some more super chats that we will get to in just a few minutes, but we do want to start out, folks. We have a lot to talk about tonight. I'm looking forward to tonight, especially Newburgh boy that I am. Our marquee story of the night has to do with a case that happens in my hometown of Newburgh, New York. Now, 14 years ago, the initial arrest was made, and that is also the inspiration for Russell Dobular's book recommendation. So why don't we get started with that before we go into headline number one?
Okay, so this book is so good, it almost made me want to be a lawyer. Actual Innocence. This is about the Innocence Project, which you might know. They are a group whose mission is to free the wrongly convicted. So this is just a bunch of different chapters just telling the stories of different people that they managed to get out of prison who had been wrongly convicted. And it's just an absolute nightmare. It really, wrong place, wrong time, and let's face it, wrong color. And you just never know. It really brings home to you how much discretion and how much power these prosecutors have over your life. Wrong place, wrong time, get identified as a suspect, and they need to make their cases. They need to close the case, and they can really railroad you. They can really persuade people that they've seen things they haven't necessarily seen. That's something this book gets into quite a bit, how much we place an over-reliance on eyewitness testimony as ironclad. There's nothing better than that, and it's actually one of the least reliable forms of evidence because people are so subject to being pushed and pulled by police. Take another look at that picture. You sure that's not the guy? Right? Right. You get a lot of, and then you get people 20 years in prison for that. So I would really recommend this, Actual Innocence. It's horrifying, very eye-opening, and God bless these people for the work that they do.
Beautiful. Courtney is back out of timeout. Thank you, Courtney. I apologize again. And she says she loves that book, still her dream job. Well, thank you for the comment, Courtney, and thank you for coming back. We apologize about that little mistake of ours. All right, folks. So, yeah, we have, as that book recommendation suggests, a lot of pretty intense subject matter tonight to deal with, and so we thought we should start out easy, start out with perhaps the funniest article I've read in a very long time. I can't think of a straight news article that reads more like an Onion article than this one. What am I talking about, folks? I'm talking about this here. This is a real article, not the Onion. From Business Insider. Oceangate's co-founder wants to send 1,000 people to a floating colony on Venus by 2050 and says we shouldn't stop pushing the limits of innovation. It's actually kind of a long piece. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I do want to read some of this. Guillermo Sonline has been unexpectedly thrust into the limelight in the wake of the Titan submersible tragedy. The co-founder of Oceangate Expeditions has been grappling with the questions about the company's ill-fated trip to the Titanic shipwreck on June 18th, which killed 5 people, including former colleague and friend Stockton Rush. The sub is thought to have imploded within hours of its descent. So yes, when we're talking about the Titan tragedy, you talk about an excruciating, unthinkably horrible death at the hands of the half-wits who thought that that was a good idea in the first place. The sub is thought to have
even
imploded.
after being warned by many people in that field that it was not a safe vessel.
Of course, right. I love this wording here. This just, I mean, they are very charitable to him in this. The sub is thought to have imploded within hours, raising concerns about Oceangate's approach to innovation and safety. Yeah, you think so? I think so. I think that's putting it quite mildly.
It's not homicidal mania. It's an approach.
It's an approach. It's a questionable approach that's cause for concern. But Oceangate is not Sonline's only venture. The businessman's latest and possibly grandest endeavor is to send 1,000 humans to live in Venus's atmosphere by 2050, 27 years away. Sonline hasn't let the recent events dampen his ambition. Oh no, and claims humanity needs to continue pushing the limits of innovation. He remains undeterred by the horrific tragedy that he helped cause just about a month back. He maintains his plan is not as crazy as it seems. I think it is less aspirational than putting 1 million people on the Martian surface by 2050, he told Insider.
Which is like a total fucking non sequitur. Like yes, Elon Musk is the most visible proponent of colonizing Mars. I've never heard him talk about having 1 million people on Mars by 2050. So what straw man are you attacking by comparison?
Well, there's 3 things. 1, it's a straw man. 2, it probably is crazier to think we can go to Venus than it is to put 1 million people on Mars. And 3, that's a hell of a place to center the debate. That's like if I was going to cut my finger off and you said, hey, don't do that, that's insane. And I said, well, is it any crazier than shooting my toe off? Okay, maybe not, but is that really the metric that you want to go by there? What an insane statement.
Either of these things make any sense?
Is there a reason to do either? Before we interviewed Norm Finkelstein, I gave him a list of words he couldn't say. And he was like, oh, so I guess it's okay if I say these other words, but not these words. And I said, well, ideally, you don't have to say any of them. You know what I mean? When he started busting my balls, I'm like, well, you could just stay off of all of them. It's not an either or. It's kind of like this.
He didn't like being censored that way.
I just asked him.
It's very strange being in the position of being the censor.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the free country we live in, right? Yeah. Sending humans to Earth's evil twin. Though it's often called Earth's twin, Venus doesn't seem like the ideal place for humans to thrive. No, that certainly doesn't. In fact, by 2050, Earth's atmosphere might resemble Venus's atmosphere. We might not have to move to Venus. We might get Venus right here in our own backyard if we go at this rate.
I'm sorry. In the corner here, they were just kind of showing what's going to happen to humans if you send them to Venus. They were being devoured by eels. A little ad.
Yeah. Even Solnine agrees. You're absolutely right that when you talk about going to Venus, it would raise eyebrows outside the space industry. And I love this follow-up. And it even raises eyebrows inside the space industry. That's like when George commits some social faux pas And Jerry says, that's not common in polite society. He says it's not even common in impolite society. Even the impolite don't do it.
This is like a running SNL sketch. The world's dumbest inventor, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Only he's not.
Well, there's no reason to think that if you put children in a catapult, you can't make them fly.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Clearly. Do you want to hold back progress, or do you want to give me little Jimmy right now?
Right, yeah, exactly. Venus is the warmest planet in the solar system. Exactly. Its atmosphere is chock full of carbon dioxide. Exactly. Its surface temperature could melt lead, and sulfuric acid rains down from its clouds. Again, sounds like Earth in about 2050, right? Its atmospheric pressure is crushing, more than 90 times that of Earth, according to NASA. Well, a little thing like atmospheric pressure has never deterred the brains behind Oceangate. In spite of this, Sondheim doesn't see why humanity shouldn't attempt to live on the planet. I'd like to debate this guy. This guy seems like a tough nut to crack.
These are minor difficulties.
Yeah, well, what are you nitpicking and naysaying for? He points to research that suggests there is a sliver of the Venusian atmosphere about 30 miles from the surface where humans could theoretically survive because temperatures are lower and pressure is less intense. If a space station could be designed to withstand the sulfuric acid in the clouds, okay, all right.
That's the best part.
Talk to me. If a space station could be designed to withstand the sulfuric acid in the clouds, hundreds of thousands of people could someday live in the Venusian atmosphere. Interesting. Wow. What a guy. What a mind. What a brain.
If the human skin could be covered in crazy glue, you may be able to drop people inside a volcano and have them build a house at the bottom.
It's true. There are actually studies that say we can get to Venus by 2050. It's true.
And also, you won't need vaccines there because actually there are properties in the air.
You won't be able to leave your house anyway, so it won't matter. You'll be forced lockdowns on Venus because you can't go outside.
You will have to be locked down for the first 68 generations.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But the human pig hybrids that will emerge at the end will be able to survive the Venusian atmosphere.
Exactly.
It's just this is a great example of what you've often said, that these people are not any smarter than anybody else.
No.
The idea that these billionaires are these super geniuses. What does Jeff Bezos say after he fucking went up into space? Comes down, starts talking about space mining.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
As vital to the future of humanity. What the fuck are you even talking about? Why should anyone listen to you?
Right. No, they're just extremely impulsive. And it's just, I mean, that's what they are. They are high risk people, who have the money to risk. You know what I mean? I mean, that's basically what they are. We're going to take a Rumble rant from Stone122112. The left wing has made everything related to right wing an unpopular opinion. This creates a culture of self-censorship, indeed, because there's always a risk in expressing right wing viewpoints since they are, I mean, look, I think that censorship is going to come for all of us at a certain point. That's why a lot of us on the left said when they took Alex Jones off of all these platforms, we said, that's it. We have started down this very slippery slope. And now we're here. We're more than halfway down by now, I would say. So let's take a couple of more super chats here before we continue on here. Abiding 71, thanks for the super sticker, my friend. We appreciate that. Super chats and super stickers are super helpful, everyone. They are part of what makes this show possible. Eric Rousseau is at the Rec Room, disabled parking in Huntington Beach, waiting for the 7 p.m. Jimmy Dore and crew stand-up show. Wearing my new Cornell West 2024 shirt. Got a blunt ready to partake before the show. Well, enjoy, and thanks for checking in with us before you get into the comedy show. That's cool of you, Eric, and we hope you're enjoying the show now. Huntington Beach, so he's probably on right now. So I hope you guys are having a good time. Hope you're having a very good time. All right, let's go to headline number 2. So, folks, there's been a lot of Ukraine news in these past 24 hours. Obviously, the morning kind of started off with, here we have Reuters. 8:08 a.m. this morning, Russia's Medvedev, we'd have to use a nuclear weapon if Ukrainian offensive was a success. So starting the day off with some pretty alarming talk. And then just a few minutes before we went on the air, it broke that there's been another drone strike inside of Russian territory, and Zelensky is now boasting that the war is returning to Russia as a sign of strength. So we obviously have some very, very troubling escalation in Ukraine within the past 24 hours. And so that is a good setup to this little piece of video we have. Famous filmmaker Oliver Stone sat down with Russell Brand and admitted that he regrets having voted for Joe Biden, given all this chaos around the world that's ensued. Let's hear him.
World War III. Potential World War III. This is the same situation as World War I in a sense. The stupidity of it because of the alliances and the fears and the built-up phobias. If we don't stop this, what Biden is doing, this guy is, I voted for him. I made a mistake. I'm thinking that he was an old man now, that he would calm down, he'd be more mellow and so forth. I didn't see that at all. I see a man who maybe is not in charge of his own administration. Who knows?
Well, exactly. So, I mean, look, I personally did not vote for Joe Biden. Had I would sympathize with his regret there, and I do sympathize to an extent with his regret, but he said, you know, I was expecting that maybe he'd be older and more mellow now, and now maybe he's not in charge of what's going on. Well, those two things are connected, right? Him being more mellow now in his old age makes him more dangerous than if he were younger and had all his wits about him. Because now that he's this old man who nobody really believes is running anything, now the people running things are the Jake Sullivans, who I talk about all the time. Just these shadowy advisors who we don't know anything about. We don't vote for. We don't know who they are, how they think, how they operate. They are president now, more or less. And so the fact that he is older and perhaps mellower, that makes him more dangerous, not less.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. We're having Thomas Frank on Wednesday, and in his book, The People Know, he talks about this moment, ironically, in FDR's administration, where government became professionalized, where this idea of government being run by academics and people from the best schools. But FDR was hiring renegade academics who were very contrary to the prevailing theories of the time, which were very laissez-faire economics, you know, hands off. But I believe he quotes FDR as saying that if he turned the country over to all of the best and leading academics, the country would be finished in 4 months. This is kind of what's happened. You've had this professionalization of government, not with people who are going against the grain, not with people who are questioning the status quo, but with people who are very inside the box, groupthink kind of people whose opinions reflect the ideas of an extremely decadent, arrogant, and out of touch aristocracy. And whenever an aristocracy gets to that point, they're very far removed from any real meaningful basis for their power. They're dangerous to the public because they're morons. They're people who talk about sending fucking 1,000 people to live in sulfuric acid. You know, these are the kinds of people making decisions for a population of hundreds of millions of people. They're fundamentally dangerous. They are too far removed from any people in their family or in their ancestry who ever had to face the raw realities of survival to make practical decisions for a nation.
Exactly. All right, let's play.
But he's going to fall down somewhere. But it seems that he's dragging us stupidly into a confrontation with a power that's not going to give.
Stay free.
Exactly.
See it first.
Exactly. They're not going to give, as we're saying here. They're not going to give. Beautiful.
I mean, that's kind of perfect for the segment.
Exactly. I don't even have to edit that out of the clip now. It makes sense within that context, right? But yeah, that's the thing. They're not going to give. They just made a nuclear threat today. What do you think is going to happen, right? What do you think is going to happen? And so, look, Tara Reid actually quote tweeted him earlier saying, hey, there were a lot of us who warned that war with Russia is on the agenda once a Democrat takes over. We were warning about that in 2016, and people thought we were insane. Yep. I remember saying very, very explicitly, back then I was just a Facebook shit poster. That's how Russell and I met, as Facebook shit posters who happened to cross paths. But I said, don't be surprised if we are in a hot war with Russia by this time, 2017, if the election goes the other way. People, oh, that's crazy. You're fear-mongering this. And, well, here we are. Here we are.
Yeah. Well, because at this point, I think, and this is what gets so confusing about the vocabulary. I mean, it's not even right and left anymore. It's the entrenched elite establishment versus everybody else. What's really different, and what I really want to get into with Frank on Wednesday, is the forces that he describes as having been the populist forces before. I don't think anybody can argue that those forces are not better represented, at least within the political system and the voting process, by Trump's movement, right? I mean, if you look at a lot of that populist energy, like, where is it? It's not that it doesn't exist on the left. It's that within the left, it's not being expressed through the political system in terms of the Democratic Party, right? Like, there's no movement like that poised to take over or keeping them on the run or on their back heels or forced to negotiate with that populist left. And that's discussed there too, that you had demagogues then as well. You had your Huey Longs, you had your Father Conklins, right? You had people pop up like that. And, so you did have that kind of demagoguery that played on populism, but it was far outweighed by the real thing, which tended to be left, which I think is still left. I mean, when you look at that Bernie Sanders town hall where the whole Fox News audience claps for his entire agenda, it could still be that. But today, for whatever reason, and this is something to really examine, the forces of the establishment have been able to crush. They were able to crush that movement, which left a very wide lane for the demagogue version of populism that Trump represents.
Indeed. Exactly. All right, let's go to a couple more headlines here before our main segments of the night. Russell, these are yours. So I understand you ran into some controversy on Etsy the other night when you were ordering your custom woven Pepe the Frog slippers. Is that true?
Yeah, they were really trying to shut down all my favorite products. Yeah, I was trying to get a Buck Angel on a shirt. I had a custom made. They shut me down. All right, so Etsy has been faced this week with the Bud Light Target treatment. A lot of you are probably aware there were calls to boycott because they were accused of banning merchandise with slogans in favor of detransitioners, people who stopped or reversed their gender transition. And this was after a user posted an email she purportedly received from Etsy warning she could be banned from the platform for selling merchandise that includes slogans like "Believe Detransitioners" and "Detrans Awareness." The message said Etsy bans any item that promotes, supports, or glorifies hatred or violence toward protected groups. Okay, so you can see here she shows you examples of what they banned. So Detrans Awareness, Believe Detransitioners, First Do No Harm with the medical staff, Funky Human Female, 100% Groovy, 100% Woman. So here it says, Boost, Etsy has fucked with me for the last time. After banning my Funky Human Female shirts last month, I've now received notice that my detrans awareness and believe detransitioners first do no harm shirts are removed. This is my I'm going to go to it. This is my final warning before my store will be permanently banned. It is time to boycott Etsy. They do not support free speech, women, or medical trauma survivors. I'm not taking it. Share and boost. It's a war now. Now, me and Keaton did our due diligence. We did look into this. And it looks like they got the living shit scared out of them because now it's back. All of her merchandise seems to be back up on the site. Now, one point they made, and me and Keaton, we did our own investigations before this piece. Okay, so there is stuff that's on the turf side, so to speak. People who are supportive of detransitioners, people who are against gender ideology. There are shirts like I stand with Riley and things like that. But I will say on the other side, there is merchandise that has violent content that I think we can all agree if you directed it in the other direction. I'm not suggesting you should in either direction. If you did something like this in the other direction, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't get a warning. I'm pretty sure you would be banned for life. So there is a lot of stuff like that on the other side that doesn't really seem to get pulled. However, after taking a look at our site today, and I went through the cart as far as I could without actually buying it to see if it was truly restored, it looks like Etsy got frightened enough by this boycott threat that they restored all the merchandise she's talking about here, because I was able to find that on her site.
Well, here's the thing. I'm sorry, were you done?
Yeah.
Okay, I can pull that off. Okay. The thing about Etsy is when Etsy gets threatened with a boycott, they must have heard it not just from customers, but from vendors. Because look, boycott Target, yeah, that hurts Nike a little bit if Nike shoes are in Target, but Nike has their shoes a million other places. They don't need Target. If you're an independent craftsperson making, jewelry or sweaters or whatever you're selling on Etsy, it's very, very likely that Etsy is your main source of income. Like, you don't have a million other sources of income that you can rely on if Etsy goes down. If you're a craftsperson and you're selling on Etsy, that's your online store. That's at least half your business. And then you're doing craft shows and things like that. I know I used to sell handmade beaded jewelry. I was never on Etsy. We had our own online store. Etsy wasn't quite right for what we were doing, but that's a different story. I won't bore people with that. But the point is, if you're selling on Etsy, God bless, you need Etsy. You need Etsy. So when people start talking about boycotting Etsy, they must have had their vendors reach out to them and be like, you better clean this shit up, because if people boycott the store, there goes 70% of my income.
I think this is a great trend. I think this is awesome. I think the fact that the Bud Light boycott and the Target boycott were so effective has finally allowed people to push back in the other direction, because now all these companies are running scared. Bud Light just fired thousands of people because the brand is just irreversibly damaged, I think, at this point. Target has lost billions as a result of this boycott. And now it's given people some leverage. If you are going to have the kind of merchandise that they have on the other side, and I don't think they should with the kinds of, I'm being very careful with my language for reasons our viewers, I'm sure, understand. But if you're,
you shouldn't be allowed to make violent threats against anybody.
That's it, on either side. And the fact that that's allowed, and I think we all know that if you did that in the other direction, you'd be banned for life. Hell, you might get debanked if you did that, especially in Canada. So hey, that is a very interesting development. That as soon as the threat of a boycott came, they very quietly backed off. But clearly they backed off because all that merchandise is back now.
Yeah, indeed. All right, we'll take a Rumble rant here from Laugh. Laugh is now over on Rumble, which is great. We love that. But Laugh, you had sent us a Patreon message saying that you couldn't comment or super chat through YouTube. We definitely did not ban or block you, so I don't know what's going on there. But we will look into it. You didn't see his screen name on the back end when you just checked. Laugh, he super chats a lot. He's part of our Patreon community. Says that his chats haven't been going through on YouTube.
Is that the tag he goes under?
Yeah, I don't think it was there. But he gave us $5.
It's called
LAUG66. He goes by Laugh. LAUG66. Is he on there? I don't think so.
We got XXX69.
We banned them a while ago.
No, it's Laugh.
LAUG66. He calls himself. You're not. That must be something on YouTube's end, my friend, because we definitely did not do that to you. We wouldn't. But you gave us a Rumble rant here. Says Ree McConnell, a stake through the gonads is too good for these people. Clean that up for YouTube. Did you see our last broadcast with Jose Vega? We got a little bit into McConnell and Feinstein both having some senior moments in public there. But thank you very much for that. Now we got one more headline, folks, before our main segments begin. With some movie news, some box office news. Oh, so first of all, we can't make any promises this week.
Trying.
It's a hellish week, but we're trying to perhaps see the Oppenheimer movie and the Barbie movie so that we can premiere a sort of double feature film club review episode on Sunday, August 6th. There's going to be no live stream Sunday, August 6th. Because we will be covering the anti-war rally in New York City, so I will not be home in time to do the stream, and that's going to be a huge day outside. So no live stream a week from today. We will be live streaming the following Monday, August 7th, which just so happens to be Russell Dobular's 81st birthday. So congratulations.
I mean, Biden is a kid to me. I don't know what
Biden's
people are talking about.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But he's too old.
Exactly.
He's just a whippersnapper.
Right. Indeed. But we have luckily, I don't think a week from today will be too late to review the Barbie movie and the Oppenheimer movie because they both continue to post very good numbers at the box office. These are the first two real zeitgeist movies in a while. Like, I think the last real zeitgeist movie was probably the Joker movie back in 2019. Since then, I don't think there's been a film that has really just captured the national conversation quite like these two have.
It's they're saying it's the most influential movie since Deep Throat.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was a zeitgeist movie.
That's a zeitgeist movie, yeah.
You want to know how crazy the 70s were? Jackie Onassis went to see Deep Throat very publicly in Times Square.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
She did.
Didn't know that.
You can actually find a film clip. No. I mean, it wasn't scandalous or anything. It was like, this is the movie.
Right.
Everyone's got to go see Deep Throat. Crazy, man.
You got the graphic? You got the screen share?
Oh, yeah. I wasn't sure if we were going to it. All right. So.
The fuck else you think I'm talking about? I'm setting it up.
I don't know. I thought we're
I'm
chatting.
doing a thing here.
I thought we're chatting. I thought maybe we could do something about classic porn.
Hey, we're working here. Yeah.
We were gonna talk Behind the Green Door next.
Yeah.
The Devil and Miss Jones, all that. All right, so the weekend's box office, which is completely devoid of XXX movies. Box office: Haunted Mansion, Spooked. Barbie scores record 93 million second weekend. Barbie is doing all right. And let me tell you, Margot Robbie was this close to going B-list, mid or not mid. One more bomb, and she would have been out of the A-list. So Barbie earned an estimated 93 million in its sophomore outing at the North American box office, one of the best second weekends of all time, and the best second weekend ever for Warner Brothers, not adjusted for inflation. It finished Sunday with a domestic cum of 351.4 million. And it held very well, dropping only 43%. A lot of times, like For example, Thor: Love and Thunder dropped like 73%, which is particularly bad, but usually things will drop about 65% on the second weekend. So it held pretty well. It's also doing well overseas. Its total with overseas is 750 million through Sunday. So it's certainly going to hit 1 billion. It'll be the first thing to hit a billion since Universal's Super Mario Brothers movie, which scored 92.3 million in its second weekend, topped out at 1.34 billion worldwide. Notice which studio's name you don't see in any of these lists of best performing. Disney. Barbie enjoyed the biggest first week in Warner Brothers history at the box office, outpacing Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. But speaking of Nolan, Oppenheimer is also a box office force of nature, holding up well. The 3-hour biographical drama grossed an estimated 46.2 million this weekend, only a 44% drop, and the biggest second weekend ever for an R-rated movie, ahead of Deadpool 2's 43.5 million, not adjusted for inflation. So Oppenheimer will finish with a global haul this weekend of 400.4 million, doing very well both domestically and overseas. And now to Disney. Elsewhere, Haunted Mansion was spooked in its debut in another big-budget summer mess for Disney. The live-action family pick opened to an estimated 24.2 million, one of the lowest starts ever among Disney's live-action reimaginings of theme park attractions or classic animated films. Heading into the weekend, tracking suggested an already subdued $30 million launch. So they were already expecting it to do badly, and it did worse than that. So Disney has definitely turned the corner from not being able to do anything wrong. Disney really can't do anything right at this point. This is not financial advice, but if I were going to short a stock this year, I would short Disney. Which is not to be construed as financial advice. In addition to going up against Barbenheimer, Haunted Mansion was also challenged by mediocre reviews and the struggling family marketplace. Now, that's kind of interesting to me. Keaton, you're a family. Is it the families are just too broke to go to the movies at this point?
I mean, I am a family man, and my wife and I went to see Asteroid City, the new Wes Anderson movie, a few weeks ago. It's the first time I had been to a movie theater in forever, between the lockdowns and just having twins and not being able to get out and go to a movie, and movies having just really sucked. We haven't really felt it worthwhile to go to the movies in a while. But even up here in the suburbs, I think it's like $18 a ticket. So yeah, I mean the prices are definitely a barrier now for sure. And I think, the pandemic put people in the habit of streaming. So like now movies are a big to do and a big expense. And now because there's not that big gap between theatrical release and DVD where, it was, if you didn't watch it in the movie theater, you had to wait 3 months before you could see it at all. Now there's probably less than a month turnaround before when it, from when it exits theaters to when it's available elsewhere. I think that has something to do with it. And I think it also has something to do with it that the material is just not good. Christopher Nolan, his movie Tenet came out the year of the lockdowns. And it was this weird thing where some theaters in some states were open and then most theaters in most states were not open. And so it didn't really become this big sort of conversation piece, which most of his movies tend to be. But guys like Nolan, whatever you think of him, I think he's obviously a fantastically talented filmmaker. I don't love all of his films. But it's really important for the art form to have guys like that out there who can start national conversations with every movie they put out because it just keeps the medium relevant. It keeps cinema relevant. I mean, here you have this R-rated biopic that, from what I hear, is not necessarily action-packed. It's long. It's very procedural, right? Again, I haven't seen it yet. But it's still this massive hit, and it's this movie that everybody's talking about. That's very important to keep cinema relevant, because without that, we'd all be talking about streaming shows.
Absolutely. And I mean, hey, Barbie is also a movie that's stimulating a lot of conversation. And it's
co-written by Noah Baumbach. I mean, Greta Gerwig is the director, and her partner, they're not married, but they've been together for, I think, like 10 or 11 years now. Co-wrote the script with her. Noah Baumbach wrote The Squid and the Whale, Marriage Story, right? All these kind of very adult sort of drama comedies. Many of them are tinged with sort of self-loathing and passive aggressiveness. That's kind of his style. So it doesn't surprise me, given that, it doesn't surprise me hearing a lot of the feedback about Barbie that we've been hearing so far.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling from a distance is, yes, it probably does, based on all the opinions I've heard from different commentators, from Crystal to the critical drinker, to people who actually liked it as well. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like if you think that this version of girl boss, war of the sexes, patriarchy is ruining my life, feminism is damaging to women and girls, you're probably going to find this movie horrifying. On the other side, I kind of feel like if there's anything that ever fell into the category of not everything has to be for everybody, it's a fucking Barbie movie.
Right.
Dudes, it's not for you. Shut up. Like on some level, I feel that way about it. But we're going to try to see it. But little addendum to this that's kind of interesting. Angel Studios' Sound of Freedom, or should we find a code word for this, like peanut butter ice cream or something? Summer hit peanut butter ice cream continued to hold at third place behind Barbie and Oppenheimer, which is just unbelievable that this movie is still holding in third place.
It's a juggernaut.
Another $12.5 million for a stunning domestic sum of $149 million, more than a slew of major studio summer tentpoles. I don't know that this mentioned this here, but domestically, I think it has done more box office than Mission Impossible by $6 million, which that's insane that it beat out Mission Impossible. Now, Mission Impossible is the shock bomb of the summer, really. It had the bad fortune to open right during this Barbenheimer event movie stuff. So it is placed fifth ahead of A24's new specialty horror film, Talk to Me, with $10.7 million for a domestic total of $139.2 million. It's holding up better overseas, where it cleared the $300 million mark, which, by the way, Sound of Freedom was only available in the United States. They just signed a deal for international distribution, which, in order to maximize keeping this film out there in the conversation, they're doing a staggered overseas release. So it opens in Canada, then it opens in Spain. It's going to be doing openings all the way through October. So file under the good guys. So A24 Studios is the only studio, I believe, right now that is operating during the strike, because they're the only ones willing to meet SAG-AFTRA demands, so they're giving them an exception. So they're actually still producing and filming. And one of the points a lot of these union people are making, and they're right. Okay, so A24 is this small studio. They produced everything, everywhere, all at once. They do these kind of indie films. They can afford to meet these demands. Universal can't.
Right. Yeah,
really? Sony can't. Disney can't. A24 can afford to function this way. So if you like horror films, support some good people, man. Check out Talk to Me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know that they were operating through the strike by meeting the SAG-AFTRA demands. That is cool of them.
Yep.
Very cool. Let's see if we could generate some box office of our own, shall we? By plugging our Patreon. Patreon.com/DueDissidence gets you call-in access to these regularly scheduled live streams. It also gets you access to our patron and Substack supporter exclusive live streams, 2 private member-only live streams per month, which we hold over on Rumble. The second one of July is coming up tomorrow, Monday night, July 31st at 8 p.m. The links for that will go out tomorrow morning. And folks, that is going to be a pretty epic show. We have the Facebook files that we're going to get into. We have Anthony Weiner's recent meltdown on the PBD podcast when the inconvenient topic of the Clinton, let's say, thrill list came up. And so we're going to do some deep dives on that. We have a lot of cool stuff going on tomorrow on Rumble that we wouldn't really feel comfortable doing here on YouTube anyway.
It's going to be one of those Gates of Hell shows. I am going to be covering the Chloe Cole testimony this week at the congressional hearings where all of the Democrats walked out rather than.
Oh, so we are doing that tomorrow. I didn't think so.
Yeah.
All right, beautiful. So we have our
we'll
third topic.
tomorrow.
I didn't even know. So yeah, we got a banger tomorrow. That one's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be pretty epic, pretty red-pilled, pretty rough stuff. So we hope if you like what we do here, you can help support us. It really helps a great deal. As you guys know, we were warned by YouTube last week when they took down Russell's shit post for guidelines violations. And so the way to censor-proof this operation and make sure you can always get in touch with us and that we'll always have a show to do is to support us at patreon.com/DueDissidence. That is very, very important. It is extremely helpful. We want to thank everybody who stepped up and did that. We had almost 25 patrons step up since we had that happen to us, and so that really makes us feel very, very proud and very happy, and it's very moving to know that you guys have our backs in that way. But that is what will keep this show on the air. If we are ever cracked down upon for real by these tech platforms whose mercy we operate at the behest of. And so it's very important if you can go to patreon.com to become a member, and we make it worth your while. You get call-in access to these shows and 2 full-length shows per month exclusively for Patreon supporters. So if you can go over there, please do. That is extremely helpful. If you would like to go to Substack, you could join our Substack, DueDissidence.substack.com. You can join there as a paid subscriber. You get the same benefits there that you do at Patreon. There are tiers of support at Patreon that you can join, which gets you a little more. So if you want to spring for the $15 a month membership, that gets you a DueDissidence t-shirt. By the way, the first batch of t-shirts are out now. They are ordered, so they are on their way to you. Thank you guys for your patience on that. It takes a while finding t-shirt printers that can do it for prices that are affordable enough to the point where we don't have to charge you guys, an arm and a leg for a t-shirt. But patron t-shirts, if you're signed up at a tier that gets you a shirt and you have sent me your mailing address and information, size and everything, those shirts are on their way to you. They will be arriving early August. Probably they said August 5th to August 10th. They should be delivered to your door. If you join at Substack, like I said, you get the same perks as the basic Patreon membership tier. Also, if you join for free at Substack, it is hugely important. That keeps you in touch with us. If we get disappeared by YouTube for a week, we don't get to come on YouTube and announce that we're banned for a week. You will not know where the show is unless you are signed up to our Substack, at which point we send out an email blast at the beginning of the day saying, hey, we're on this channel at this time this evening. Come join us. So that's our pitch to you. It really does help us a lot. Thank you so much to everybody who has signed up. It really has made a huge, huge difference this past week or so, and we hope we can get some more Patreon signups this evening into tomorrow in advance of what will be, I promise, a banger of a Patreon exclusive show. We've already started prepping that.
And especially now that we have a warning, you really want to become a patron because there's stuff we just cannot risk doing here now. So a lot of that stuff is just going to be done over there. It's not that like we covered the Etsy thing, but look at how we had to talk about it. And we had to leave a lot of things unsaid. And tomorrow, as I said, we're going to cover the Democrats walking out on the video of the doctor who performs the surgeries. And there will be a lot more freedom to discuss that. I saw some people asking where to find the banned shitpost. It's on Rumble, right?
It's on Rumble and it's on Twitter as well. And I might retweet that.
That was Delaware Joe and the Lost Campaign.
Exactly. That's what that was titled. If anyone wants to see that on a platform where they're allowed to, of course, we strongly discourage that because it's inappropriate. So we urge you not to. But if you have to, if you really can't resist, but we urge that you not partake in that.
We're not paying your therapy bills.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Danny asks, is Newburgh close to Yonkers? About 45 minutes. 45 minutes to an hour. Newburgh is about an hour north of the city. So thank you for that question, my friend. Courtney, can you imagine the AC bill over on Venus? Yeah, no, exactly. It would be a miserable place to live. Miserable place. Although when you think about it, acid rain, a lot of carbon dioxide. It's not going to be too much less inhabitable than Earth probably by that time, I would imagine. You know, so not too
We're
big.
I mean, every summer is getting just more like a science fiction movie. It really is. You know, there was a Twilight Zone episode like that where everybody was freezing to death because the sun was moving away from the earth, and then it turns out that was a dream. But what's actually happening is the sun is moving towards it. Oh no, it was the other way. It was the sun was moving towards the earth, and then they wake up and it's actually moving.
Right.
But this is like that episode where everything just keeps getting hotter and hotter and hotter until at the end the oil paints are melting.
Yeah, indeed. Laugh is back on YouTube. Said something too naughty for YouTube, but sorted it out. All right, beautiful. Well, thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Good to have you here, and we know how that feels. Eric Rousseau, thanks for the $10. We appreciate that. So when are the identitarians going to protest the Barbie movie since they grossly miscast the Kens? Obviously, the Kens are trans men since they have the packages. Where to protest the riots? Hey, I thought Jimmy Dore was coming on. I thought you were at the Jimmy Dore show. Was he got the warm-up act on? Does he have Max on now?
Yeah.
Did everybody see the Max Blumenthal set? I thought he was pretty good. He was not bad.
It's Aaron tonight.
Oh yeah, it's got Aaron Monte tonight warming up for him.
Yeah. Warm up. Yeah.
Well, thank you for watching, Eric. And yeah, we just did our take on the Barbie thing. I don't know. I think Ryan Gosling is a decent choice for a Ken. I think that makes sense. I think that's fairly good casting. I can't think of who else would be. But then again, I haven't gone to movies in a while. I don't know who the real young hot stars now. I'm just out of the loop, you know.
Nor do I.
Yeah.
Nor do I care particularly.
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, folks. Well, we'll get to some more Super Chats a little bit later on in the show. So thank you guys once again all for being here. We saw a couple of free Substack subscribers come in right now. That's what we like to see. I like to see when I talk. I like to see people take action. So yeah, Substack and Patreon, please do hit that up. It's very, very important. It helps us out a tremendous amount. Segment number 1, folks. So the NDAA is set to pass when Congress returns from August recess, which will, of course, authorize an $886 billion defense budget. Now, Roger Wicker, senator from the great state of Mississippi, introduced an amendment to this bill to create an Office of the Lead Inspector General for Ukraine assistance. Pardon me. This would be a $10 million project to oversee and monitor the billions of dollars being sent to Ukraine. So he introduces this add-on to the bill, $10 million over $886 billion. So cost, obviously, not really an issue there. The yeas had it in the vote. So they actually had more senators vote yes to create this panel than vote no. 51 yeas, 48 nays. But the Democrats, all but 2 of whom voted against accountability for Ukraine funding, invoked, which is really surprising because it's a racist Jim Crow era tool to suppress progress. They invoked the filibuster to block the vote. And so this panel amendment failed, even though it had majority support. Every Democrat but 2 voted against this. And so let's just bring up the votes here to see who voted how. Pretty much a party line vote. The only Republican who joined the Democrats was Rand Paul, and Rand Paul seems to have objected to this on his sort of staunch libertarian grounds of like not creating any other sort of bureaucratic institutions on top of the ones that already exist.
Right. He wants to take the office of the Afghanistan Inspector General and transfer it to
Ukraine it over
instead of creating a new department.
So he had a very, very specific sort of technical objection. Aside from that, all Democrats voting no, including, of course, Bernie Sanders, including, of course, Elizabeth Warren. All the progressive Democrats voted no on oversight for Ukraine funding. The only 2 Democrats who voted yes were John Ossoff, Democrat from Georgia.
What the fuck?
Well, I have a theory as to why this is. And
Like
John
like
Tester.
if there was anybody I was convinced was an animatronic device that they had run.
Yeah, right. Programmed to do what they want. It was Ossoff. Indeed. You had Ossoff and John Tester from Montana, very, very conservative Democrat from a very, very conservative state. And also you had Kristen Sinema, who is now technically, of course, an independent, but she is more or less a Democrat still. They were the only Democrats who voted yay on the bill. Now, if you notice this, the thing that's interesting here is that you have the so-called progressives like Bernie and Warren saying, no oversight for World War III funding necessary. What do you notice about the 3 Democrats who voted yes? They're all moderate Democrats from swing states, if not red states. Tester in a red state. So now things are so topsy-turvy that it's not even the progressives who dissent from war anymore within the Democratic Party. They are falling in line. It's the centrists now. Now it's the moderates. Now it's the kinds of Democrats who it's the blue dogs. It's the kind of Democrats who we could never stand, who know that because they are in difficult swing states, they have to vote in a way that doesn't alienate that moderate, independent, conservative-leaning swing voter. And what does it say that they feel compelled to vote for oversight for Ukraine? That really shows a turning of the tide in terms of opinion about the war, because now what that signals is that they are afraid of a normie backlash if they vote against that, which never used to happen, right? Normies were always, to put the support our troops bumper sticker on the car, the flag, the whole thing, right? Now it shows you that the vulnerable Democrats... Exactly. It was all that. That was all centrism back then. Now what this signals to me is that if the only Democrats voting yes on this are Democrats in tough states, that really says that now the normie position is that this war has gotten out of control. And I think that's a very, very significant thing. Obviously, we could scream and yell about how Bernie's a pussy for getting cucked, and that's all true. That's all true. But we already knew that, right? We've known that for a couple of years now. What's interesting about this is that the moderates voted yes.
Sanders has become such an irredeemable scumbag. It's sad to behold. It really is. I mean, it's just unbelievable how low he has sunk from what he purported to be. How do you vote no on oversight of sending? And I was reading what their defense for this was, saying, well, why you would do it in Afghanistan, where they all concede it was very successful that when they sent in an inspector general to keep control of the money in Afghanistan. They're saying, well, that was a different situation. They had no functioning government. This is a society with robust civil institutions. What the fuck are you talking about? This was the most corrupt nation in Europe before the war. You are pouring billions of dollars into the most corrupt nation in Europe in the middle of a war where it's very difficult to even keep track of things, even if you wanted to. You concede that American weapons have shown up on the black market. So what possible reason do you have other than procedural ones like Rand Paul's libertarian objection, which at least makes some kind of fucking sense? He's not arguing with the principle of the thing.
Right.
What objection do you have to having oversight over fucking billions of dollars you're dumping into a country that you know was deeply corrupt? That before all this blew up, you weren't going to let in NATO because it was partly because it was too corrupt.
And even after this all blew up, we had a lot of reporting about concern for this very thing. And I'm not just talking about the Seymour Hersh piece where he made the allegation that Zelensky was embezzling money and that the generals were driving around in, fancy cars and things. And I'm not saying I have any reason to doubt Seymour Hersh on that. I don't. But I'm saying even if you want to discard that as saying, well, they only had one source, whatever, you go back, just Google Ukraine corruption funding. There have been stories written since the war started, after the war started, March 2022, April 2022, 2022, January 2023, December 2020. They're dated all over the place, even after the war started. This is not some made-up concern, okay? It's been reported in dozens of outlets, dozens of times, that there is reason to be concerned about sending tens of billions of dollars at a time to this government, given their track record. And so how you could be against a $10 million oversight panel as an amendment to an $886 billion budget, it's absolutely mind-boggling, because the money is not an issue, right? That's not it. So what the fuck could it be? What the fuck could it possibly be? Especially since, as Russell, you said, Rand Paul says the Afghanistan panel worked very well.
Well, so do they. They
Right.
conceded, but they're trying to say it's not the same thing because Ukraine has a really strong functioning government and civil institutions. I mean, right there, that's giving away the game. Because
Even if we were giving the money to Norway, we'd want an oversight panel. Sure. Why wouldn't you?
Well, and especially you know that these weapons have ended up on the black market. How did they get there? Right. They fell off the back of a truck.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So why would you not want to stop things like that from happening in the future? I hate to tell you, there's a long history of blowback when we send these kinds of weapons overseas, where this kind of, you ever heard of Al-Qaeda? Where this kind of thing comes back on us, right? So why would you not want to track the weapons and make sure they don't wind up on the black market? It's crazy. And clearly, I mean, the only explanation I can find is they're afraid of what an inspector general would find.
Well, of course. I mean, that's the obvious answer, right? That's the obvious answer. I just want to put this tweet up here because I almost forgot about this. But, you know, Bernie, after he just voted no, says somehow we never have enough money for healthcare, education, or housing, but always have more than enough money for a bloated and wasteful Defense Department that cannot even pass an independent audit. It's time to change our national priorities now. Lee Fong quote tweeted that. LOL, within about 15 hours from this tweet, Bernie Sanders voted against the special inspector general audit of $117 billion in Ukraine war money / contractor. So yeah, I mean, if you make this point, hey, we never have money to take care of our people, but we just ship money out the door willy-nilly, then how do you, I guess he voted for that after this. I'm sorry, I got the timing backwards about that at first. Pardon me. But how do you then go and vote against the $10 million oversight panel, which could potentially save you money? It could save you a lot of money because, as what Russell said, that's almost certainly the case, that they're afraid of what a panel would find, and then they'd be under pressure to cut the money off, right? So if you really were so concerned, Mr. Sanders, about us wasting all this money over there, you would have voted yes for the oversight panel.
Of course. And what is
the other layer of hypocrisy? I'm sorry, the invocation of the filibuster, right? After all this talk, we need to abolish the filibuster. It's this old racist thing, you know, and now they use that. Maybe that's why they don't want to abolish the filibuster, right? Maybe that's the real reason.
Exactly what I was
because
thinking.
They need it in place for situations like this.
Right. What if they didn't have it? You know, then everyone's going to find out that, you know, it's like Boss Tweed over there. 90% of the money went to the fucking pockets of Zelensky and his generals. Like, God knows what they would find if they dug up what these people did with hundreds of billions of dollars when we know they were deeply corrupt in the first place. You know, it's gonna make Afghanistan look like Switzerland if they dig into the finances over there. You know, obviously, if you didn't have anything to hide, you wouldn't lean on CBS not to report on questions like this, right? So, you know, there's another case where we're seeing, you know, the terrifying influence the government has over the media at this point, where even if somebody steps out of line and tries to do honest reporting, they get swatted down and they're afraid of losing their access, so they back down. So, yeah, and Elizabeth Warren at the same time is running around insisting on more oversight for the Pentagon.
Right.
So why do you not want this oversight in a foreign nation where we're dumping? I mean, these people are just all fucking clowns. You know, I mean, it really demonstrates what FDR was saying. You know, this is what happens if you put a bunch of experts in control. They're driving the country into the ground. You got a bunch of out-of-touch elites with a groupthink elite perspective who are just doing what makes sense and what benefits people within their class. You know, the defense contractors that write them a lot of checks, I'm sure, also don't want any oversight in Ukraine. And what, you know, this is another one of these bizarre spectacles of our times. Apparently, the Republicans are more independent from defense contract influence than Democrats are at this point. This is why anybody who says you have to vote Democrat, what the fuck are you talking about? Why?
Right. Yeah. No, indeed. Of course. Jake, our producer, is playing producer duties in the studio here. Let's have a round of applause for Jake. Thank you for being here, my friend. He just said we're up to 143 in the Rumble chat, which is great. So please hit that follow button over on Rumble. If you're over there on Rumble, the follow button's in the lower right-hand corner. Please smash that. Thank you very much for being here. Please smash that like button over here on YouTube, guys. Really helps us quite a bit. And hit that subscribe button, of course, if you're not already subscribed. We passed the 11,200 subscriber mark earlier today. And so we're very happy about that. We just had a new Patreon member sign up, so we're happy about that, too. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Very, very encouraging. Appreciate all your support. Keeper of Tracking, yes, we just added you to the Patreon scroll, my friend. Great sales pitch. Became a Patreon member yesterday. Thank you, sir. We appreciate that very, very much. Thank you so much. Courtney, a member chat, says, I actually got sick from the heat for the first time ever this summer. I have a cold intolerance, but heat has always been fine until now. Yeah, it's been brutal. It's been absolutely brutal summer. Between all the storms and all the heat and very, very thick, wet air, just pretty brutal.
That's why I'm sneezing a little bit, man, from being out with those freaking Germans on the two hottest days of the summer. Those were both 94-degree days that we're constantly going into air conditioning and back out into the sweltering heat. And I have a really good immune system. So it looks like I'm going to fight it off, but I'm a little sick. Yeah, no, that'll do it. I remember those days. These bitches want Nikes. Thanks for the $2. Have you seen Oppenheimer? Thoughts? You must have just come in because we were talking about how we hadn't seen it yet, but we just did a segment on the box office, so we gave our sort of pre-screening takes on it, if you will. But we're going to try and see it this week and have a review for you guys a week from this evening. Once again, folks, if you came in late and you didn't miss the beginning and you missed the top of the show, there will be no stream a week from today. No stream Sunday, August 6th. That's because we will be at the Humanity for Peace rally where our friend Jose Vega is going to be speaking. We're going to be filming that event. And so we will have no show that night. We will have a show the Monday after that, which is Russell's birthday, August 7th at 8 p.m. So you're not losing a show. We're just going to reschedule it. That's how that will work. So just a little program note. Mark it down. Mark your calendars. Courtney, thanks for the $5. This is why I say there's another major shift in parties like after the Civil War. Dems and reps are switching. Who is fascist? Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say they're necessarily switching. I think they're both fascist now. I think they're both kind of trending one way the wrong way. It's the way I've described it, and this is how I think of it. It's like a taffy machine of ideology exploded, spraying elements of everything we've thought of as right and left in all directions, and each party picked up some pieces of both.
Yeah, exactly, because as that Ukraine vote just demonstrated, it's not just that the two parties have flipped, it's that on some issues the factions within the parties have actually flipped. Like now the moderate Democrats who we used to rail against all the time are the only ones who are voting for the oversight, right? The lefty Democrats now, there's no mystery as to how they'll vote. They just fall in line, no questions asked.
It's like fascism is the marbled fat running through our body politic at this point.
Exactly. Well put. All right, folks, let's go to segment number 2 of the evening. So last week, UPS and the Teamsters came to a tentative agreement that will be voted on by the rank and file over the first few weeks in August. The vote goes from August 3rd to August 22nd. While initial and subsequent reporting emphasized gains for workers, including ours, by the way. We did put out that segment talking about all the gains that are in that TA. Some members were disappointed with those terms. And so we're going to take a look around just to see some of this feedback, because I think it is very important that we hear from the workers who are going to vote no, as is their right, obviously. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a little bit. But I want to pull up just some tweets that caught our eye over here on social media. So this is the first one from Teamsters Mobilize. We are calling all rank and file UPS Teamsters to vote no. We are ready to fight. So this outlines some of the shortcomings of the new TA. $21 starting wage for part-timers is a joke. $25 is the low, so they weren't happy with that increase. Catch-up raises up to $150, a total insult to long-timers. No guarantees yet that MRAs are permanent, so they can still slash our wages without any notice. They are looking to get that base pay up to $25 an hour. They want base part-timer pay at $25 an hour, catch-up raises of 75 cents per year of service, 5% annual part-timer wage increase, and a 4-hour shift guarantee for all part-time workers. That is a big one. If you remember what I was saying, because I worked as a UPS preloader for a few months, it was going to be a full-time job, but it ended up being seasonal because they tried to pull something where they told me there was only a 50-50 chance they'd admit me to the union after the holidays, so I quit at that point. But when you show up to preload in the middle of the night, what UPS often does is they will hire more people than they need, figuring a lot of people are going to quit, so they'll be overstaffed. So you'll show up at 1:30 in the morning all suited up, having woken up in the middle of the night and driven to the warehouse, and they'll say, sorry, we don't need you, go home, and they won't pay you at all. So having the 4-hour guaranteed minimum is good, so that if they do that to you, they at least have to make it worth your while that you got up, drove there, and drove back, at which point they're likely to put you to work for the 4 hours if they got to pay you either way. But that also takes some of the workload and the stress of the job off of the people who are already working. So that's definitely a good demand. So, you definitely have factions of workers here who are prepared to vote no. We'll take a look at this other group of workers here, which posted a very, very short video.
Preload!
This is preload, is what I used to do.
Denton preload! What are you going to do?
Easy one there. Sorry.
Denton preload! What are you going to do?
Easy. All right. This is from Luigi Morris, who has done labor reporting for a while. He reported on the last UPS contract dispute as well. UPS part-timers at Griffin, Georgia are also voting no on the tentative agreement. Our people deserve better, said Jess Lee, a preloader for nearly 6 years and a member of Teamsters Mobile. There you could see them posing with the X's on the ballot, and yep, that's what the preloading job is. Those boxes come down, and you have to get them in those trucks in the right places very, very quickly for a very long time with only 1 10-minute break per shift in the dead of night. 10-minute break.
And jobs like that, there's something that people who don't work in those kinds of fields, like construction, or don't know people who work in those fields, those jobs will destroy your body over time.
Of course.
Like eventually, by the time, people who work in construction, by the time they're 50, I've never known anybody who worked in construction who by the time they were 50, their knees are fucked up, their shoulders are fucked up, they have all kinds of joint problems. Your body just is not made to do these kinds of repetitive motions all day, every day. There's, you're talking about a lot of toll on your body that these jobs take. And, this amount of pay doesn't nearly compensate for the long-term effects of doing this, of what that's going to do to you.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, it is absolutely brutal work. That's why a lot of preloaders graduate to drivers, because that's kind of the way you work your way up. But a lot of people don't want to be drivers because they don't want to work the 12-hour shift from 7 to 7 and have no life outside. They just like to make extra money as a part-timer while everybody else is dreaming, right? And then they'll maybe take a part-time gig here or there, but they need enough money, they need enough wages to be able to do that, because to balance that sort of overnight work, even though it's only part-time, just because of how brutal it is and just how unforgiving the hours are, they want $25 an hour, and there are a lot of them who say that they're not going to vote yes on this TA because they're going to hold out for a better deal. And in the words of Kshama Sawant, they are going to escalate for a better deal. So Kshama Sawant's new organization, what's that?
Well, this is it. Like, even I know we have a very broad spectrum of ideology in our audience, from communist to MAGA.
Right.
But even if you're pro capital, no, it's true. I mean,
even going to say from communist to fascist. We have a lot of fascists in the audience. We love you.
Look, we're suckers for the fascists.
Shout out to our fascists in the audience.
Nobody can take. You guys have the best fashion sense. The communists.
Right.
Come on, man. Step off with that. Those uniforms.
Right.
The gray world you people live in. So at least that's what the old Coke commercials would lead us to believe.
Right.
Do you remember those, Keaton?
I don't know which one you're talking about.
They had this. Was this Coke? I can't remember who it was. I think it was Coke. The people in the chat will definitely know. They had this whole commercial of like the Soviet Union fashion show. So, the big babushka would come out, swimwear, and she'd come out, and then evening wear, and it would be the same outfit in the next one. This was Cold War TV commercials. But it's not. This is what you have to understand, because a lot of conservatives, a lot of creeps like Jim Cramer, they'll try to make it out that the money's not there to pay these wages. It's just a question of how it's distributed. Because if you look at the earnings reports of these companies, they're making money hand over fist. They're making billions and billions of dollars. It's that when you look at worker actions like this, and if you want to apply this nationwide, it's reversing. It's an attempt to reverse what's happened over the last 40 years, where all of this money has just been funneled to the CEOs, funneled to the executives, and funnel to the shareholders. And when you talk about that, they're going to try to say to you, well, but what about Americans' retirement accounts if the stock values drop? It is, I forget the exact number, but the majority of stocks are held by a very small number of people. Most of those stocks are not held in people's 401ks and not held in their pensions. Not to mention the fact that if everyone was getting paid better, they would have more money to put into their retirement as well. So this is really about distribution of wealth. It's not that you're going to crash these companies, because that's the argument we're going to start hearing.
This is about getting them to spread the profits around more than they are now. It's very simple.
And the money's
they have
there.
A lot of money. They don't want to give it to the workers who generate the wealth for them. It's as simple as that. Now, Kshama Sawant, whose new organization, Workers Strike Back, actually had a conference call about this very issue today, which I actually sat in on for a little while. I didn't get to sit in on the whole thing. But she, in a recent interview with our friends over at RBN, talked about why her organization is going to support the no votes amongst the rank and file. Let's hear her. This is about a minute.
Obviously, this tentative. So what are we seeing here? Obviously, this tentative agreement, as the Teamster leadership is saying, that this is something that they support. But as we said in our tweet and Worker Strike Back, it's actually the rank and file that needs to decide, and we will be supporting the rank and file on this. But just to get into some of the specifics of what is in the contract, union leadership is saying that the contract this tentative agreement will end the hated two-tier system. Obviously, there was the main issue for that, and wages are the main issue for the workers. But what we're seeing here is that multiple tiers are already baked into the massive wage differential between full-time workers and part-time workers, and between drivers and inside workers. The tentative agreement does not create 10,000 new full-time jobs, which it's a victory for the UPS executives. And then in addition to that, the tentative agreement, it opens the door to creating a new low-paid tier of part-time workers forced to use their own vehicles to get more hours. I mean, we should actually be fighting to end the so-called personal vehicle driver classification altogether, not allowing UPS to expand it. This is why Workers Strike Back is urging the Teamster rank and file to vote no on the tentative agreement and to join us in the fight for the contract that UPS workers deserve. Workers Strike Back is hosting a public meeting on Sunday, July 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern, where rank and file Teamsters will be speaking, and then groups like Teamsters Mobilize and Joe Allen, the author of The Package King, will also be there. So I don't have the registration link with me, but if you go to workerstrikeback.org, you should.
Well, that happened this afternoon. Like I said, I sat in on a little bit of that. Teamsters Mobilize was the first tweet that we showed you guys. And, you know, like I said, as someone who worked overnight at a UPS warehouse for a few months back in 2020, you know, I'm sort of more familiar with what the job entails and the sort of disparities between, you know, driver pay, loader pay, and things like that. So the two things that I just want to point out there as a matter of like specifics, when she talks about the two-tier system, about how the wages for drivers, they got a better deal out of this than the inside workers, that's a concern you have, because the thing you would hate to see, obviously, in this situation is the drivers all vote yes because they got a better deal and the inside workers all vote no, and now you have a divided workforce. That's something that is a concern, if I'm being honest. And then in terms of the personal vehicle loophole, where they hire out people to use their own personal vehicles as either independent contractors or whatever arrangement they set up with them. I guess it depends on how long they're going to be using it.
A lot of these companies do that, right? Like
Yeah, do a lot.
LaserShip only does that. Right?
LaserShip is only that. Yep, only owner operators, independent contractors. I interviewed for them as well. But the thing is, if you were to do away with those personal vehicles, you would create a lot of jobs, because you would have to basically overhaul the entire infrastructure of the company. You would need new warehouses because you need more trucks. Either that, or you'd have to have 2 overnight shifts that rotate out, because these warehouses are built, they are spaced out to the inch. These trucks you saw in some of the photos we showed, they parked an inch from each other. So if you're not using personal vehicles, which are loaded out in the back, you're going to have more conveyor belts, more warehouse space for trucks, and probably more sorting stations as well. I would imagine the volume would be too much. You'd be there for 10 hours if you didn't do that. So there are certain specifics there that they would have to implement in order to satisfy all of those demands. But without litigating every single one, I think overall she makes a very strong point, because the fact that labor got a lot of concessions on this first round of negotiation means that I think labor has good reason to smell blood in the water. And once you have management back on its heels, that's when you have to get as much as you can get. Because as we know, as Americans, those opportunities don't come around very often. These contracts are negotiated every 5 years. So before they get another bite at the apple, 5 years are going to go by. So if you have a situation where management has already given a lot, that's not time to say, okay, thanks very much. That could be time to, as Kshama says, go for even more. And the thing that makes me trust Shama's judgment on this is that she is very, very conscious of the risk of defeat. She throughout her activism and throughout her career on the Seattle City Council, understands this is why she was so critical of Bernie this second time around, because she says repeated defeats have a demoralizing effect on your movement. Movements thrive on victories. They run on victories and they die on losses. So she's not the kind of person to pick a fight that she doesn't think she can win. She's very, very precise in that way.
She's
that's
one
why
of the
she has
very
racked up
few really effective strategic thinkers on the left, period.
Exactly. You would not get reelected. I don't know exactly how many times it was. You would not get reelected 4 or 5 times to the city council in Amazon's home city if you didn't have very good instincts about what fights you can win and how to win them. And so the fact that she's saying go for it, I absolutely trust her judgment on that. And so I would have to say, yeah, go for it. Get more. Get more.
This is something, and I think Kshama, this is what she's trying to address with Worker Strike Back. We, as a people, the American people, it's really the frog in the pot of boiling water. We have so slowly lost our power and lost our rights and lost our sense of dignity in regards to labor, that it's going to really take an awakening of class consciousness to get it back. There was a time when Americans had a very strong sense of the antagonism between labor and management, and they've slowly had that massaged out of them and also settled into a kind of learned helplessness, a belief that the system cannot be beaten, that it cannot be overthrown. But you have to remember that these entrenched interests, as powerful as they seem, they are no more powerful than the monopolists and robber barons of the Gilded Age were, arguably less so, because we have means of organizing and communicating that didn't exist at that time. It's a question of waking people up to their power, because in the end, shit can't run without us. That is what they realized back then. And that's why you had all of these mass strikes and labor actions. And eventually you did get the capitalist class to give in. And that's how we had this kind of golden era of the American middle class that's been completely hollowed out now. To get that back and to make it more distributed among the population, i.e. not racist in the way that it was the first time around, where it's basically white people enjoying that, but getting it distributed to everybody. We need to once again pick up the lectures, the lessons of the labor movement, of the golden era of labor. We need to get together across. I understand we have a lot of people in our space that don't like to get into culture issues because they see it as a distraction from this. They see it as a distraction from the real fight that has to happen. Unfortunately, culture, they're not mistaken in believing that that's been laid as a trap to keep us all divided. It is. Absolutely, it is a trap. But it's a trap. That's what makes it such an effective trap. It's a trap we have to defeat. You can't ignore it. You can't just go around it. It's just not possible. We do have to take those things on as well. But I do agree, and I think this is something we can all agree on. The best antidote to that is to focus on what unites us, which is the battle of labor against management. And it's something that very systematically the American people have been taught to forget about, or taught not to think in terms of.
Well, when you center class, it also gives you an opportunity to make some of those other points about more cultural issues, as we call them. We talked to Brian Caloris, who was, pardon me, Shama's campaign manager when she was being recalled. We interviewed him, and he was talking about this action where they showed up, Shama's sort of campaign people showed up with some striking workers, right? Many of whom were Trump people. And they went there and they're like, okay, we are a Marxist, if not a Trotskyist organization, socialist alternative. We are here to rally with you. We are with you. We want you to have a better life. We want you to have higher wages, better health care, all that. So we're here with you. And they were very, very grateful. These Trump people were very, very grateful to the communists for showing up and helping. But what Brian said they told them is they told them outright. They say, if we hear any immigrant bashing on the picket line, any gay bashing on the picket line, any racist shit on the picket line, we're leaving. And you know what? They didn't hear any of that shit because you know what? The MAGA people were grateful they were there. So they didn't want to piss them off. And maybe it made them look at communists a different way. Hey, you know what? These people are not these crazy wokesters. They just have certain lines that we're not going to cross, and we're going to join together. So if you actually want to make points and make progress on some of those cultural issues, focus on what unites you and use that as a way to like communicate to people. Hey, listen, if you're going to start immigrant bashing, we'll leave. You don't want us to leave, right? Okay, so be cool, and we'll unite. And that's what it's all about.
I agree. And, you know, I mean, that's good. They didn't ignore them. But then you look, all of the standards that you're talking about that they laid down are classical liberal beliefs.
Right, of course.
Those are classical liberal standards. But if you walked up to those guys and said, look, if I hear any shit about how you don't want your little girl who likes to play with trucks to identify as a boy, we're out of here, they probably would have told him to go fuck himself.
Right, they would, right at that point, right, exactly.
So this is where I'm saying, yes, those are things that, I mean, I think reasonable people can agree on. I think there is, and I've talked to a lot of people on the left, particularly the communists, are not on board with that stuff. And they see it as a psyop. A lot of people do. That it is so divisive that's exactly why it's there, to just rip people up with this. And I understand why a lot of people look at it and say, well, let's just not talk about that. Because if we talk about it, then we stepped in the quicksand, right? And that's what they want.
Right.
But you're just going to have to. You're just going to have to try to drain the quicksand. You have to, because as long as people think we're that, you're not going to be able to get them on our side. That's what makes it such a great trap, but it's a trap we have to defeat, in my opinion. I don't think you can ignore it.
Yeah. All right. I want to go to one more Kshama clip. This was as part of Revolutionary Blackout Network's Labor Summit, which happened over the weekend. Congratulations to those guys. I know, Russell, you put in a lot of hours this weekend. So have they. They did, I think, a 12-hour stream yesterday where they did nonstop interviews and things like that. So this is Kshama Sawant and Jill Stein talking about the same themes that we just played earlier: movement building, organizing, labor, and things like that. This is more specifically about those possibilities within the Cornel West campaign. So let's take a listen here.
It's just the beginning of the fight.
And also,
you got Congress, you got donors. Go ahead, Kshama.
Yeah, no, sorry to interrupt, CJ, but that's exactly. I mean, the point about the need to build movements is so central, not only in terms of the framing, as you said, but also, I mean, if hypothetically speaking, if Cornel West, on the basis of the campaign, that he's the demands that he's calling for, cancellation of all student debt, Medicare for all, guaranteed quality education and housing, and also, as we were saying earlier, a genuine left anti-war candidate. All of these are important demands that working people should organize around. It's not just that he is talking about it. We have to join this campaign. But furthermore, hypothetically, if a campaign on the basis of these demands on the left actually won, there's not that prospect. And as you said, CJ, that's not what we're here for right now in this campaign. But if that were to actually happen, it's not like somebody like Cornel West can go to the White House and then great things will start happening.
Yes, that's a great point.
Can you imagine the war that the ruling class would absolutely unleash against the working class? So there's no way of avoiding a political battle, a political clash, and that's where we need to ready our forces, and that's why we need the working class to be involved and to be activated. And one of the values of having a campaign like this is to help, sort of generate those forces.
Yeah. So, once again, just a real clarity of purpose. She speaks in a way that does not sugarcoat the challenges that are in front of us, but at the same time, you feel like with Kshama, you're in good hands because she's a proven fighter and a proven winner. And her thesis is very, very simple. It's not any easier or more difficult than what she says it is, which is it's about organizing and fighting. That's it. That's it. The elites are going to wage a war on workers. They already have. If you have a transformational breakthrough campaign, even if that campaign does not become a threat to win the White House, as we think the Cornel West campaign will not, but if it becomes a threat in the way that it's already presenting itself as a threat to upend Democrats' apple carts, right? They are going to react viciously, and there's no need to panic about that. There's no reason to fall into despair about that, but there's also no reason to delude yourself that it's going to be any easier than they'll make it on us, because it's going to be extremely difficult. But the answer is, whether you're organizing a campaign, a sort of disruptive campaign, or whether you're organizing a UPS warehouse, the key is find those interests that unite us and build solidarity around that. And she is just such a forceful advocate for that, and she speaks very tactfully. She doesn't make it sound any easier or more difficult than it is. It's very simple. You just need a plan. You need to execute. You need to organize. You need to fight relentlessly. And that's how you win. And if you do all those things, you will win, because there are more of us than there are of them.
Well, this is what really distinguishes her. She's a serious person. She has a theory of change. It's a rational one. It's not pie in the sky. It's very pragmatic. It's very grounded in political reality. Just her whole formulation there is refreshingly direct, right? Hey, what do you think would happen if you elected Cornel West? It's going to be unicorns and puppies. They're going to come for us. Of course. What she's laying out there, that you have to already have an organized working class in place to meet that battle.
Right.
That's somebody who's thinking in three-dimensional chess.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And the fact that she's here, I won't play any more sound, but she has Jill Stein there, who is obviously, I guess, right now serving as, the campaign manager of Cornel West's run. I think Cornel could really benefit from adopting some of that just very, very simple rhetoric. Because, he's an academic, he's a great speaker, he's got a brilliant mind. And I personally love when I hear him talk about jazz and poetry and all that stuff. I don't mind that myself. But if you're talking about organizing, that very direct, very simple style is something he could really benefit from. So I hope that, she grabs Jill Stein's ear and then that message gets to Cornel. Because I think some of that really, really simple, direct, and forceful rhetoric would be very, very powerful coming from his mouth as well.
And for the love of God, don't play your album for him. That would be hard on a music.
Oh, the Jill Stein, the folk album, right? Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that to him. That could break up the partnership right there.
Yeah, we would hate to lose the campaign over something like that, right? Tusker, thanks for the $5. Appreciate that. Not that topsy-turvy historically. I know what you're talking about. The Social Democrat wing of the left voted for World War I war credits and almost always side with their national imperialists. Well, yes, you have DSA now is divided as to whether or not to back Cornel or Joe Biden. I just saw that headline in Newsweek.
You're fucking with me.
Yeah, no, there's some internal strikes. They don't know what to do. I'm sure we'll cover that on the Post-Duopoly show on Tuesday. By the way, folks, we have a very packed itinerary this week. So we are live right now. We're going to be live for patrons and paid Substack subscribers tomorrow in our patron exclusive live stream. Sign up if you have not already. You're not going to want to miss that one. We're going to be on the Post-Duopoly show Tuesday, back here Wednesday night. So we are on 4 nights in a row here, folks, in the middle of what is already a very, very busy week. So we're in the middle of it. But we will get through. And thank you, Tusker. It's a good point.
I don't know why everybody not only wanted a tour this week, they all wanted long tours this week. It's just crazy.
Brutal.
It is, yes. And this is the week that we have 4 back-to-back shows.
Right.
I'm going to be talking a lot. This is a lot of human interaction for an only child.
Lemon and honey tea. Got to drink a lot of lemon and honey tea. Save those vocal cords. Nicholas, thanks for the 99 cents. Appreciate that, my friend. Diablo Neruda, love you guys and just want to throw a few dollars your way beyond my Patreon. Well, thank you for the support and thank you for being a patron. That is super, super helpful. We appreciate that very, very much, my friend. Nick, with another $4.99, did you fellas think Republicans will legalize weed before the Democrats? Well, I know that a lot of states have already legalized weed, and I think the split is more or less even. Am I wrong about that? Am I right about that? Have Democrats been better on that than Republicans? I'd have to look at the state breakdown of where it's legalized, where it's decriminalized, all that stuff.
What's usually happened with Republicans is that they'll have a red state referendum, isn't it? More than it's that a politician champions it.
Right. They'll put it on the ballot. It'll be a direct democracy thing. Yeah, that sounds right to me too. Obviously wasn't prepped for that question, but I will look into it. That's an interesting question. Thank you for the donation. Mana Talk, thanks for the $5. We have a pollution problem, not a made-up ozone problem or a climate problem. I think we have both. I'm pretty much a believer in both. Maybe it's the doomer in me. It just seems pretty hot. It's pretty hot. I don't know, man. It seems pretty hot out there.
I don't know where you're living.
Although, I mean, look.
I was just reading today, my beloved New Orleans, they're getting like triple the number of heat calls. It's like 115 degrees out with the heat index.
Oh,
people are just fucking passing out over that, man.
Absolutely brutal. And, look, I'm not with the whole, Earth Day movement either. I thought the Planet of the Humans movie made some really, really interesting points about how, look, the first Earth Day was how many decades ago now, and where are we? Are we better off than we were back then? Most social movements have some progress to show for themselves. The environmental movement has had the opposite happen. So, I'm not in for the whole program there, but I would think we have both a climate problem, an ozone problem, and a pollution problem. I tend to think, as Russell said, it's pretty hot out there. Ellen, thanks for the member chat. After classes all day, Al worked UPS night shift for a couple of years. As you say, it was brutal. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So he knows how that is there, Ellen. Thank you very much for that member chat there. Nicole Vance, YouTube won't let me send money still, so please put the Patreon info in the description. Yeah, those are in the descriptions. Once we put the video up, I'll put the links in there. But patreon.com/DueDissidence. Pretty easy, but thank you, Nicole. I appreciate that. Alrighty, let's do one more member chat here, and then we'll get to our other super chats in a little bit. Americans are the most productive workforce, and the oligarchs have been ripping us off for the past half century, indeed. In fact, let me get to these super chats now, because they're big ones, and this last segment is kind of a long one, so I don't want to make you guys wait too long, especially since Laugh gave us $50. That's good for a singing bowl ring. We actually had...
Well, that's 50 pounds. That's even
50
more
pounds,
than
so
that.
it's more.
It's more than that.
So go ahead, ring that singing bowl.
I'm trying to, because some people, we got some DSA members, they have sensitive ears.
Oh yeah,
I'm holding it away from the mic.
Beautiful. Thank you for that very generous donation, sir. The sheer mediocrity of the bought individuals who represent our ruling class is obvious. Yes, exactly. They fear and therefore hate the poor and the working class. Never forget these people are your enemies. Kshama is someone to emulate class war. Yeah, indeed. Indeed, and that's a very good point. It's a point we've often made ourselves about how, these rich people, these uber rich people are really not any smarter or more talented than the average person. And perhaps it's an interesting point you make. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why there is such a class war. Because maybe they know that. Maybe they know that ultimately they don't deserve their money any more than the people loading the trucks or driving the boxes around.
Bill Gates is just a fucking rich kid with a mom on the board of IBM who hooked him up with a contract.
Exactly, and the computers don't even fucking work half the time. I don't know if you noticed that. I mean, now I'm a Mac owner.
Well,
for a
they're
while.
kind of notorious.
Yeah, exactly. Black Freud, thanks for the $20. You appreciate that, my friend. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Kshama knows how to win in this environment. Exactly. I hope Wes listens to her. The field is not as invincible. With truth and clarity, anything can happen. Yes, and she inspires that confidence in people. And that's one of the many reasons why she's as valuable to the movement as she is. All right, folks. This is our third and final segment of the evening. And this is a segment that I'm very excited to be able to do. I have been following this story for a very long time because I myself am a former resident of Newburgh, New York. I grew up there. That is my hometown. I know all these locations very, very well. But just this week, a judge ordered the release of 3 of the Newburgh Four, which is a group arrested on terrorism charges back in May of 2009. Now, there was a film that was made about this called The Newburgh Sting that premiered on HBO in 2014. It was actually featured at the Tribeca Film Festival. I was lucky enough to attend the premiere screening because a friend of mine worked as a field producer on the film. And so HBO purchased this documentary in advance of the Tribeca Film Festival. That's how good it was. And I strongly recommend everybody see it. It is available on YouTube, but really nowhere else. It's not on HBO Max anymore. You can find it on YouTube if you just search in Newburgh Sting movie. But I will just summarize the facts of the case here before we get to their release. So an FBI informant named Shahed Hussein was sent to Newburgh, New York by the FBI to find terrorists. He was an FBI informant. He went to the local mosque in town. He flexed his immense wealth, gold chains, fancy shoes, luxury cars, and tried to ingratiate himself with some Muslim men at the mosque to see if he could get a little quote-unquote plot going. He was not there to infiltrate any ongoing suspicious activity. That's how the FBI always says it. Well, we don't create terrorist plots. We infiltrate ongoing terrorist plots and disrupt them. Nonsense. This guy was sent in cold, didn't know a soul at this mosque, knew nothing of anyone there. And he ended up ingratiating himself with one man, James Cromedy. Cromedy was a low-level drug dealer who served time on drug charges and was poor his entire life. Newburgh, New York, once again, where I grew up, is the poorest city in New York State, the most violent city per capita in New York State. In fact, it almost always cracks the top 10 poorest and most dangerous cities in the country. So this is a very, very desperate place and very desperate shape.
What was it like when you were growing up there?
Well, I grew up in the town, which was outside, but I went to school in the city, and I went to public schools, so we were all bussed in and bussed through. I spent a lot of time in these neighborhoods, and yeah, it is a very desperately poor, deindustrialized river city, as a lot of them are, north of Manhattan. Manhattan went through it a little bit, too, in the 60s and the 70s, right? It went bankrupt at one time. But a lot of these river cities up north, whether it's Poughkeepsie, Kingston, Newburgh, or even Albany, where I am now, they were hit very, very hard in that sort of mid-third of the 20th century. Newburgh had a big manufacturing base that never recovered once the manufacturing
like Rochester
left. Yeah, exactly. And so Cromedy was this low-level drug dealer. Like I said, he served time in the past. He was very, very poor his whole life. And Shahed Hussein, this FBI informant, asked him if he would like to make money serving Allah, right? And I'll explain why I know all this. He expressed interest, at which point Hussein started asking him about jihad. Now, he goaded Cromedy into assembling a team because there needed to be a conspiracy charge associated with this act. And if your co-conspirator is the FBI informant, then it's not a conspiracy. So he encouraged him to assemble a team to help carry out these terrorist acts, but Cromedy dragged his feet and at one point disappeared for several months. Now, this is all documented in the film. The film actually shows the actual conversations on surveillance FBI informant footage between Hussein, Cromedy, and later the rest of these four guys. So after Cromedy disappeared for several months, Hussein finally tracked him down months later, calling him on the phone and this time sweetening the deal. $250,000 he offered this man to do some jihad in the area. This is, of course, a life-changing amount of money for anybody. When you grow up as poor as these guys grew up, $250,000 is this otherworldly sum. Cromedy said, okay, you have my ear. He recruited three other men, Onte Williams and David Williams. They are brothers. And their little brother, Lord, had a large tumor in his liver that they thought they could use the money to get removed. He had a liver tumor the size of a watermelon. So he was in very, very desperate shape. And they thought, well, this is the money we could use to make our little brother well again. The third partner that they found was Laguerre Payan, who was a mentally ill, diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic living in essentially a halfway house. It was just a one-room row apartment at the time. But even then, the men were reluctant to go through with Hussein's plot. At one point, Hussein, the informant, gave Cromedy a camera. This was not featured in the documentary, but I happen to know this because I know some of the people who were victimized by this. Hussein gave him a camera to document targets so they would have evidence. They're building a case. Cromedy took that camera and said, okay, I'll have the photos from you. He ended up selling that camera on the streets of Newburgh for $50. Because he was a hustler. He was playing him. He thought this guy is this Indian guy, this Pakistani guy, whatever. You know, he's coming into our place with all this money. I'm going to work him, right? They were driving them around. They were paying for meals and all this stuff. So he was hustling the guy, obviously. And at one point in the film, you can clearly say when they are talking about shooting a missile at an airplane parked at the airport, one of the guys in the back says, well, how do we know that there aren't any people inside? They may be cleaning the plane or whatever. We can't shoot at an airplane unless we know it's empty. He explicitly says on camera, and this was evidence in the trial, we're only interested in destroying property. We don't want to take any lives. They were very, very adamant about that the entire time. But slowly but surely, Hussein convinced these men to hit targets, including a synagogue in the Bronx and an airplane at Stewart Airport Base in Newburgh, New York. Now, they were arrested at the site of the synagogue because they planted what they thought were plastic explosives. They were fake, inert matter given to them by the informant himself, obviously, on May 20th, 2009. Now, when this went to trial, they were each offered a plea deal, which would come with a reduced sentence of 10 years with the possibility of getting out in 5. All 4 of these guys rejected that plea deal, insisting that they would not admit to being terrorists when, in fact, they were not. They were then found guilty by a jury. They lost the case, and they were sentenced to 25 years behind bars each, which was the mandatory minimum sentence because a missile was involved. If a missile was not involved, they could have gotten off without much jail time if the judge deemed that they did not deserve such jail time. The reason this was a federal case is because Shahed took them across state lines to get what they thought were the weapons. Right. This was completely concocted out of thin air. He did not infiltrate an ongoing plot. As you can see from what I'm saying, this was created by this FBI agent. But they lost the case, and they were sentenced to 25 years in jail each. Now, the reason I was able to tell you that whole story is because the surveillance footage became public info. It became public information because these guys did not take the plea. If they took the plea deal, that evidence, that video footage that was the basis for the documentary, which I sort of gave a crude summary of just now, would not have come to light, which means we would never have known the actual facts of this case. It was because they decided to fight and lose, unfortunately, that we now know all of this. But this week, 14 years later, a judge ordered these 4 men free. Now, because, as you can tell, I have some knowledge of this case that goes beyond what was even in the documentary film and what a lot of the media wrote about this case, I was able to vet a lot of the articles that were written in the past 24 to 48 hours since news broke. And I read the New York Times piece. I thought the New York Times piece was terrible. It left out a lot of key information, did not generate nearly the sense of outrage that it should have. I read a few other pieces. By far the best piece on this, and you talk about up is down, left is right, who knows who to trust anymore. By far the best article about this was from the New York Post by Patrick Riley. So I just want to put this on the screen and give him his credit there and give credit to the New York Post for doing what I thought was by far the best write-up from what I've seen, because the New York Post has a lot of ads. I broke the article down into slides, so I'll read that right now about this court ruling. So if we look here, the article starts, 3 of the 4 Muslim converts convicted of a post-9/11 plot to bomb New York synagogues and shoot down planes were ordered to be released from prison by a judge who declared their 25-year sentences unduly harsh and unjust and blamed the FBI for radicalizing them. Ante Williams, David Williams, and Laguerre Payan, 3 of the 4 men who became known as the Newburgh Four, were granted their request for compassionate release by U.S. District Judge Colleen McMahon on Thursday. In her ruling, McMahon slammed the FBI sting operation that snared the men, whom she wrote were hapless, easily manipulated, and penurious petty criminals that were set up by the feds and their unreliable informant. Listen to this statement. The real lead conspirator was the United States, McMahon wrote. God bless this judge, man. If you watch that movie, as Russell did this past day, you would lose a whole lot of hope that there was anybody who was capable of getting this right in a high place. Very, very pointed words. We're going to go back to this article in a second, but one of the things Russell pointed out to me, because he watched the film at my recommendation last night, Who was the head of the FBI at the time that these guys were rounded up and preyed upon? Who was the head of the FBI at the time?
Oh, Robert Mueller.
Oh, Robert Mueller.
Oh,
the hero, Mueller. The savior of democracy, Robert Mueller.
Yes, he was the guy who railroaded not only him. I thought this was one of the most interesting things in the movie, maybe the most interesting thing. At the end of the movie, they show that there are these other people who are all poor black people living in inner cities that were also set up and railroaded by the FBI. And they interview one woman in Newburgh after the sentence comes down. And she says, you got to give us more to believe this, because it can't all be poor, black, uneducated people who are responsible, who are terrorists, basically. This is what they do. They purposely went after, there's my read, they don't say this, but they purposely went after people who could not fight back. When they decided they needed to generate cases to get headlines of how they're busting terrorists, and also to justify their budget, to keep the money flowing, to keep the terrorist windfall coming into the FBI, into the agency, they went after the people who can't fight back. They went after poor black people. These prosecutions, the whole intention, the whole conception of them was completely racist. And this is a big part of how the racism in the justice system works. I'll give you a small example. I used to drive a horse and carriage, and every April they would just give out tickets to everybody. Right? It was they would claim they didn't have quotas, but they clearly did, and probably they had to pass a performance review around that time. Every year around April, it was just raining tickets. So I went and responded to one of these tickets, and I got sentenced to a quality of life session. So I had to sit in 2 hours of some civilian that they got to make this all sound reasonable. Now, at this time, I lived in Hell's Kitchen, which was very fratty, right? It was a lot of drunk college kids throwing up on the sidewalk every weekend, a lot of bars. What was funny, though? This precinct is right there where you got all this drunk and disorderly behavior from these college kids. And every single person in this quality of life lecture was a working class person. Not only black, not only brown, some white, but it was people who got tickets for having a hand truck on the sidewalk,
right?
Which who even knew?
Right.
How the fuck are you supposed to get the shit from the truck to the front door? Right? Like, you can't use a hand truck.
Right.
It was all stuff like that. It was none of the people whose mommy or daddy might know somebody, right? Who could give you trouble. You never know. Maybe daddy's a lawyer. Maybe they're friends with someone in the mayor's office, right? They only went after the most powerless people that they could find, because it made no sense in a neighborhood like that you don't have one college kid, like not one.
Right, right, exactly, yeah.
It's only these poor schmucks, taxi drivers, that's it, in Hell's Kitchen? Doesn't make any sense. This is that writ large. Like, if you want to look at a lot of the injustice in the criminal justice system, some of it is not racism per se in terms of I hate people of this race. A lot of it is, how do I make my career on the backs of people who can't fight back?
Of course. And how do you, and in this case, and they say this in the movie, the government just turns on its own people. Because at the time, this was the war on terror days, right? This is when the menace that everybody was supposed to fear was the Muslim terrorist, right? Now, what's the enemy that we're all supposed to fear? The white supremacist neo-Nazi, which is why they framed those 4 guys for trying to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, the governor. Those guys got off because it's harder to frame white guys than it is to frame black Muslim guys, right? But this is the same thing. So when you see this stuff, it's amazing. They can make you look so guilty. And so much of the information reported about this case was a bald-faced lie, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But I just want to repeat that last line from the judge.
And those clips of Chuck Schumer, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was part
I don't think
what,
any of us. I don't think any of our audience has any respect to lose for Chuck Schumer. But if you did,
well, that was part of what
do
radicalized
it.
me. I mean, this was 2014 when this movie came out, so this was before the Bernie campaign, it was before Trump, it was before all that. But seeing Chuck Schumer go on TV and defend this case as a model example of how the FBI is supposed to do their job, nauseating. That was a big eye opener for me. Like I said, I was one of the first people ever to see this movie. I saw the first film, the first screening at the Tribeca Film Festival. So she says the real lead conspirator here was the United States. The article goes on. It was heinous of the men to agree to participate in which she called the government's made-for-TV move, she wrote, but added that the sentence was the product of a fictitious plot.
It's a typo.
Yeah, maybe it was made-for-TV movie, yeah. But added that the sentence was the product of a fictitious plot to do things that these men had never remotely contemplated and that they were never going to happen. She blasted the government for using a, quote, villain of an informant, we'll talk about the informant soon, to troll among the poorest and weakest of men for terrorists who might prove susceptible to an offer of much-needed cash in exchange for committing a faux crime. McMahon slashed the three's 25-year mandatory minimum sentence to just time served plus 90 days. Don't forget, 25 years was the mandatory minimum for this quote-unquote crime. They were given the mandatory minimum because despite the guilty verdict, the judge presiding over that case obviously knew that justice had not been done, so they gave them the minimum time that they could have, right? They will be released in 3 months to give probation officers time to find suitable housing for Payan, who suffers from a mental disability. We are tremendously pleased that our clients are on their way home, even if it's 14 years too late, said Amit R. Gupta, part of a group of lawyers representing Payan and the Williamsons, who are not related. At the plea hearing, by the way, Payan did not plead guilty or not guilty. He did not have an answer. He was disoriented. He was confused. He didn't know where he was. At one point, his pants fell around his knees. I mean, this is a mentally sick person who was roped into this by just this utter low-life scumbag, Shahed Hussein, who we will know more about in just a few moments. Gupta described the three as destitute men, quote, entrapped for their race, religion, and working class backgrounds by a government looking to spread fear of Muslims and justify bloated budgets. The fourth man, James Cromedy, wasn't part of the compassionate release request, so he was the guy who Hussein originally went to and is expected to complete his prison sentence in 2030. So the three who were released were the three who Cromedy roped in at Hussein's request. But Cromedy's lawyer, Kerry Lawrence, told the AP that he intends to speak with him about pursuing similar actions. So hopefully he can get out as well. I'm confident he would be entitled to relief for the same reasons articulated by Judge McMahon for the other defendants, Lawrence said. The four were arrested on May 20th, 2009, and charged with plotting to bomb 2 Jewish synagogues in the Bronx and shoot missiles at military supply planes at Stewart International Airport. I was at a play rehearsal that night. They were arrested in the Bronx, but the homes of the families were raided in Newburgh that night. And I was at the theater. As soon as the play rehearsal got out, I went to make a left, which is the way I would have had to go to get home, and I couldn't. There was a squad car parked right at the corner where that theater was. There were choppers overhead. They made a huge, huge spectacle of it. But yeah, I remember that night very, very well.
Well, and you know, I mean, let's stop for a second and think about this.
Yeah.
14 fucking years. You know,
Yep.
you go around once, man. You go around this world once, even if you believe that you know, there's something after. Well, you know, it's not going to be this, right? Like, you get this once. 14 fucking years of these people's lives on a scheme. So it's just a scheme to frame these guys by one of the most powerful agencies in the government. It's just horrific to contemplate. I mean, imagine something like that happening to you, right? 14 years.
That means
You're
one
not-
out
you're
of
not
every
gonna
6
get
days
that
on this
back.
earth you spend in a cage. You can't get it back.
Yeah. Well, especially the age they are, man. They're youth.
Right.
They lost their youth in a cage.
Yep.
You know,
No, just absolutely unthinkable, absolutely horrible. But yeah, you're right. I mean, when you just think about that length of time, and once again, the FBI justifies these sting operations. They were very open about it. This was a sting operation. Anderson Cooper asks in the film, he says, so as I understand, they went to purchase explosives and they ended up purchasing them from the FBI. No, first of all, they did not plan to purchase anything. They weren't willing to shell out any money. They had no money to shell out. These guys were piss poor.
They didn't have a
None of
car.
them had a car. None of them had any means to get around. They had nothing. It was the agent, it was the informant who went to them every step of the way, dragged them around. The guy disappeared on him for months. The guy was only interested in hustling him for lunch money. And this guy makes it look like he's a terrorist who was looking to buy explosives, and they ended up selling them to the FBI informant who did just such a noble job of infiltrating an ongoing plot. Complete lies. All of it. All of it. Absolute lies. Absolutely zero truth to any of it.
Well, and also they connected them to a mosque where Kshama had been there 3 times, and that was it. He wasn't a member. And the guy they interviewed said, if they had been members of the mosque, we would have told them to stay away from this guy.
Right. Right.
Because they were, that was one of the points the film made that was interesting, that mosques were very, very careful about anyone who seemed suspicious and throwing them out. And he made the point, instead of treating us like an enemy, they should have worked with us, because you had people who did go on to commit terrorist attacks that were thrown out of mosques. For being suspicious.
Right.
So if the FBI was working with them, they could have said, hey, we have this guy. Right? The Boston Marathon bomber had been thrown out of
a mosque. Yep. Indeed. Instead, they go and infiltrate the mosque to try to create terrorist plots where there are none.
Right.
We read on. Prosecutors portrayed Kshama as the ringleader of the chilling plot who recruited the other 3 and was loyal to a Pakistani terrorist group, though the government later decided not to present any evidence about foreign terrorist organizations at trial. The defendants had spent months scouting targets in the heavily Jewish Bronx neighborhood of Riverdale and securing what they thought were explosives and a surface-to-air missile aiming to shoot down planes, prosecutors argued. They were arrested while planting FBI-supplied fake bombs outside the Riverdale Temple and the Riverdale Jewish Center very, very early in the morning. I don't believe there was anybody in any of those buildings at the time, because they were very, very clear from the beginning that they were not willing to hurt any people. From the start, relatives said the 4 men were down on their luck and needed money. According to a 2014 HBO film, which I talked about earlier, about the case, Kshama was a Walmart employee and a drug dealer. David Williams was a part-time student with a past drug rap who needed cash to get treatment for his brother's liver cancer. Payan, a Haitian immigrant, and Ante Williams, a drug dealer who had served time. None of the 4 men, all broke, even owned a car. They were promised a payment of $250,000 by FBI informant Shahid Hussein for a successful mission. All 4 men agreed to help under one condition: nobody gets hurt. David Williams said on FBI hidden video footage. That's the scene that I referenced in the film. It's on camera. That was presented at trial. That didn't sway these fucking idiot jurors. This was the most open and shut entrapment case you could possibly think of. How they were found guilty in the first place is an indictment of the entire system, including the rank and file, i.e. people like us,
Right.
Russell but the masses.
Yeah. Well, and then to lose an appeal.
To lose on appeal.
How? Like, when you look at this evidence, like, it's so clear that they were entrapped. I mean, everything in this case is the very definition of entrapment.
Yep. Literally the very definition of entrapment. There are some conditions that you have to satisfy to meet entrapment. This meets those. There had to have been no active plot. There had to have been resistance from the subject when you bring that plot to them. That's important, right? They had to have resisted at first, which these guys did. They disappeared on him for a number of months. And number three, they had to have not had the means to do the thing without help from the government, from the informant. This satisfies all three of those cases. Yep. Open and shut, slam dunk, black and white, no questions asked. Defense attorneys claim that Hussein riled up the men with rhetoric, chose the targets, and provided the bombs and missiles. The defense portrayed Hussein as a manipulator trying to please the government after his own legal troubles. He had been convicted of fraud for helping illegal aliens get driver's licenses and desperately trying to avoid deportation, had turned FBI informant in 2002. So just like with the mafia, right? Big Pussy, right? And the Soprano family, right? He gets in trouble and they say, hey, you could either go away for 20 years or you can go away for, 10 if you help us, rat on your friends, right? That's what they did here. They nail a guy and say, okay, you can either go to jail or you can help us catch other terrorists, right? Jurors deliberated for 8 days before convicting the men in 2010. 3 years later, they lost on appeal. This is the end of the article. Hussein also worked with the FBI on other stings, including one that targeted an Albany pizza shop owner and an imam and involved a loan using money from a fake missile purchase. Both men, who said they were tricked, were convicted of money laundering and conspiring to aid a terrorist group. Hussein was in the news again after one of his limo company's limousines crashed in upstate New York, killing 20 people in 2018. That made national news. It was a horrific limo crash up here in my neck of the woods, is where I live now, in which 20 people were killed. That limo had failed a safety inspection a month before the crash, and the slain driver didn't have a commercial license. Hussein's son, Nauman Hussein, who operated the company, was sentenced to 15 years in prison earlier this year for negligent homicide and manslaughter. Here's a report from Democracy Now! On that incident, just to get acquainted here with Shahed Hussein. So here is a photo of him. This is a screenshot from the movie. That's him hanging out in the mosque with the fancy suit and the Starbucks cup, talking to a lot of just desperately poor people, drives his Mercedes onto the lot. Here's some...
And they also got into, this was kind of funny, that he owned some fucking, it must have been the most horrible motel in the world, because they showed a review where all the reviews were 1-star terrible.
Oh, yeah.
And one line you can see from the review was, "You're better off sleeping in your car."
Those things. Yeah, indeed. And then this is some other footage. So this is what we mean when we talk about this is from the movie. So obviously Shahed had surveillance footage set up in his home. He also had surveillance cameras on the dashboard of his car, because he was using that to build the case against these guys. And then that became evidence at the trial once these guys refused to take the plea deal. So there's some shots of the guys. Like I said, that is from the film. But then, oops, sorry. There we go. For some reason that froze on me. I will take that out of there. Here's a headline from when those guys were arrested. Daily News. Hate gang, bloodthirsty fours, chilling mass murder plot. They're dumb but dedicated and very, very dangerous. This is what I mean. They can make you look
so fucking racist, man. I'm sorry. Step back for a second. Could you imagine the FBI going to Scarsdale and doing this to a bunch of white people?
Of course.
It would never happen. It would never happen. Not in a million fucking years.
Yep. Nope. Just absolutely horrible. But here is the Democracy Now! Report on Shahed Hussein's limo company after that horrific crash that killed 20 people. This is from 2018.
How a limousine crash that killed... We turn now to look at how a limousine crash that killed 20 people Saturday in upstate New York is linked to a man who is an FBI informant long accused of lying to the government and getting away with it. The crash in the town of Schoharie was the deadliest U.S. transportation disaster since 2009. The limousine had failed an inspection last month and was not licensed to be on the road. The New York Times reports that shortly before the crash, one of the victims sent a text message to a friend saying she was worried about the limo's condition. It has since been revealed the company that owned the car had a record of repeated safety violations. Earlier this year, it was issued written violations after vehicle inspections by the New York State Police and the Department of Transportation. On Wednesday, state officials arrested the operator of Prestige Limousine Chauffeur Service and charged him with criminally negligent homicide. He is Noman Hussain, the son of a Pakistani immigrant named Malik Shahid Hussain, who is the company's owner and also an FBI informant.
In 2001, Malik Shahid Hussain was arrested for helping people cheat on driver's license tests. In exchange for avoiding deportation, he took a job as an FBI confidential informant, posing as a radical arms dealer in FBI sting operations. Hussain was a key figure in the FBI's case against the so-called Newburgh Four, 4 black Muslim men sentenced to 25-year prison terms after they were convicted for placing what they thought were bombs in a New York synagogue in 2010. Defense attorneys say the men were entrapped by Hussain.
So there you go. There you go. Just an absolutely horrible story. This is obviously a victory, 14 years too late. It is not the last you will hear about this case on our show. I happen to, like I said, have some contacts with some of the people who are more intimately involved with this, who can speak about this much more passionately and much more forcefully and with much more information than I can. And so we will be hearing from some of those people in the coming months as that release date nears. One person who knows quite a bit about this case is my father, who got a phone call from David's mother the morning that she found out that the judge had ruled to release her son. And so my dad gave me a call before any of the news broke about this. And actually, I don't know if you're listening, Dad, but he did call into the show tonight to talk about this a little bit. So you're on the air now. Can you hear us? I would be very surprised if my father figured out how to work the StreamYard, just for the record. I would be absolutely shocked if he knows how to do this. Dad, are you there? Going once? Going twice? No. All right. Well, sorry, I set it up. I tried my best. But
he's almost as good at technology as you are.
Yeah, exactly. I see where I get it from. I tried. Maybe call into the I'll do a practice run with you for tomorrow if you want to call into the Patreon show. We could talk there because I did my best there. Text me if you think you figure something out, and I can admit you again. Yeah, I mean, just an incredible story. Like I said, I hope I painted a good enough picture for you guys in that little breakdown. I tried my best. It's hard to do without a lot of the video exhibits. I would love to screen that film either on this channel or on Rumble or somewhere. It's on YouTube. The film was and here's another weird thing about that film. That film was purchased by HBO. The filmmakers who made that film, they were a husband and wife team. They had done a previous documentary that had gotten picked up by HBO, and so they had a sort of in with HBO prior to the Tribeca Film Festival, and HBO purchased it in advance of that run on the festival circuit. HBO Max does not feature the film anymore. It was on Apple TV for a while, I guess. It is not on Apple TV anymore. This film is nowhere to be seen, so I don't know if it's owned by anybody because it is on YouTube now. You can watch it if you just put in Newburgh Sting, right? Then you can watch it on YouTube. But it is perhaps released from copyright. Like, I don't know, because if it was on YouTube and it was still copyrighted by HBO, it would not be allowed on YouTube. HBO has censors that would take it off.
It's weird with HBO like that. There are a few HBO things that are on YouTube, like the old Iceman interviews are on HBO about the serial killer. It was some of the first original programming they had that everyone watched. There's this really interesting thing I like with the actor Robert Wall. I don't know if he has a degree in history or something. He did like NYU lectures called Assume the Position that were all about common beliefs of American history that are wrong. That's on HBO. I would actually recommend that too. our viewers assume the position on YouTube. They're both HBO and they're on there. They've been on there for years. So I don't know. Like once they pull things down, maybe they don't care. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but it is definitely a strange thing. Like I'm really not sure how that is available to screen on YouTube if it's licensed by anybody, because they still have ways to monitor that. So I don't know, but I would absolutely love to screen the film. I'm going to try to let my dad in again because he just texted me. Are you there? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm looking now, man. The Iceman interviews are still on there.
Yeah. Oh, they are? Interesting.
Yeah. Yep. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of that. Let's go to some super chats here. From Goba 499, thank you. What if the Ukraine Oversight Committee was going to be just a front to avoid the actual oversights? I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, you don't know how much you can actually you don't know how much you could actually trust those things. But
who watches the Watchmen?
Yeah, right. Who watches the Watchmen? Exactly. That's interesting.
I mean, apparently the guy in Afghanistan did well, so get that guy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Kazeski was saying Earth Day was co-opted by corporations and token recycling. Thank you for the $4.99. Appreciate that, sir. Black Freud, thank you for the $5. Going to see Jimmy Dore live tonight. I'll tell him hello for you.
Everybody's at that show tonight.
Okay, so you're over at Huntington Beach. Is he doing two shows? Is that what that's all about?
I didn't know Black Freud was local.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Let's go to a couple others here. The ensuing Palmer raids were poorly planned and executed and heavily criticized for infringing on the civil liberties of thousands of people swept up in the raids. Thank you for the member chat, Dwayne Vogel. The ensuing Palmer raids. Okay, when was that? When did that happen? I never heard of those.
What was that? The 20s?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Russell is looking that up. Oops, what did I just do?
Yep, nailed it. 1919 to 1920.
Oh, beautiful. Look at that. Katie Nick, thanks for the $10. The informant was the father and part owner of that limo company where 20 people were killed in an accident in Scolari. Spent 15 years in jail. Yep, just sentenced to that. Absolutely. Virtuoso, you're in the chat now. You are live. Can you hear us?
I can hear you clearly, guys. How you guys doing?
Good.
All right, how you doing?
Yeah, so I just wanted to chime in on this particular topic because I remember reading about this on the Village Voice about 15 years ago. And I can tell you that was about the only paper in New York that was covering that story honestly. What you saw in that headline right there was disgusting. Like they probably dedicated like at least probably half a page to
the
that.
The Daily News?
Yeah, and all other papers probably, that didn't want it reported, honestly, because it was just after all the criticism of the Iraq War, and the war on terror, the mainstream media was still on war on terror mode. Like they still haven't, caught up to what the people's, reaction was to America's, war on Islam. So to me, it astonishes me how long it took them to really get this case, thrown out. I mean, 14 years, man. And
14 years of these people's lives, man. I mean, that's not a joke.
It's not a joke. It's similar to that.
And these prosecutors and these agents, they never face fucking consequences, man. They should have to go to fucking jail for 30.
They should
do that to somebody. You should have to
go to jail.
Of course.
It's just the same thing with the Central Park 5, all the others,
Yeah. That said, it'll never stop as long as the people who do this shit don't face any consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, fuck it. You do this, you should go to jail. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This is, I mean, that is improper prosecution.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be one of those days where it's like it's just gonna keep coming back, these cases are going to get thrown out. Who knows how many of these, have taken place,
Well, it says that in the film, that how many of these things have taken place, right? How many of these operations have taken place. And look, this is why I've been so adamant that the January 6th protesters have been overcharged and that their sentences are too long. Now, they got sweetheart deals compared to these guys, right? Because of the, racist nature of things, right? When the 4 guys who were entrapped in Michigan, when the FBI set those guys up and framed those guys for that supposed kidnapping plot against Whitmer, the jury was able to make sense of that and understand that that was an unjust prosecution because they were dealing with 4 white boys, right? 8 years after 9/11, 4 black Muslim men were not going to get the kind of hearing that these 4 white guys got now. It's just that simple.
Well, that's what's always so dangerous when you have a public hysteria, because how do you get an impartial jury in an environment like that, right? When everybody's all ginned up,
right?
That's what was so dangerous about when they polled Democrats about what they would want to do to people who refuse to get vitamins for the virus of unknown origin, where they were like, they wanted them to go to camps. Right? Like, what would have happened if you got prosecuted in that environment and you get these fucking people on a jury, right? Whenever you get this kind of mass hysteria or mass panic, this is a flaw in the jury system. When in environments like that, how do you get a fair jury? How do you get a fair trial? And 9/11, that was the ultimate mass panic.
Of course. All right, I'm going to try admitting my dad one more time. Hang on, Virtuoso. You can hang out here, but I just want to try admitting my dad one more time. Okay, you're on. Can you talk now? Can you hear it? Is that thing? Yeah, it says your mic is on. All right, here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call you on the phone. The only thing is you're not going to be able to hear Russell. You're only going to be able to hear me. But I can get you to say your piece that way. We'll do this real bootleg style here. Hang on. I'm calling him on the phone now. Sorry, Virtuoso. Go ahead.
No, I mean, it's like what
he didn't answer.
Russell was talking about. It's like these.
See, people say I'm ignoring him. I'm not ignoring him. I try everything. This is what it is.
This is a pure moment. I'm sorry.
This is what it is.
The Village Voice is not around. The Village Voice went bankrupt a few years ago.
I think they're digital only. I believe. If I'm not mistaken.
Are they still?
Digital? I think they're online. I'm not sure.
All right, here. I'm gonna put you on the phone now. I'm gonna put you on the phone now. All right, I'm gonna put you on the phone. What? All right, we have to turn the speaker off.
Oh, you're right. You're right. It is still online.
Are you on the speaker now? You got to turn the speaker off.
What speaker off?
Hello? Yeah, no. Now the speaker's off. All right.
This is getting very Mel Brooks.
Wait, what speaker off?
You have to turn the computer speaker off. You have to turn the computer speaker off.
So much feedback.
You have to turn the computer speaker off. You have to turn the computer speaker off because there's going to be endless echo.
This is
just going to be like you're talking with me. You got to turn the computer speaker off. No, you need the phone to talk to me because I'm going to put you on the show on the phone.
Why did it sound like Michael Savage right now?
Exactly, yeah. It's like Michael Savage in a Starbucks.
Oh, man.
Listen, is your computer speaker off? Is your computer speaker off? All right, you hung up.
Dave's not here.
Dave's not here.
He gave up. Oh man! You know what? On that note, guys, I'm gonna head on now.
All right, thanks Virtuoso. I can hear you now, and everybody can hear you now. Go ahead, talk into the phone.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can everybody hear my dad now on the phone?
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody who's listening, of course. Right?
Well, Russell
Everyone
can't.
figured out how to work
Yeah,
this fucking thing.
you just
All
can't
right.
hear Russell. You can only hear me.
But how come it, listen, you'll tell me later how come it didn't work. I just think you're trying to fuck with my head here, but all right.
Everybody
all right, listen, all right, let me stop. Okay, let me just back up a little. I think you did an excellent job summarizing the Newburgh Four situation. You did a really good job. One mistake that I want to point out immediately before I forget.
Yeah, they're
is
not
that
brothers, are they? Right?
Yeah, they're not brothers.
They're not brothers. I know. I caught that.
Oh yeah, they're not brothers.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
I mean, they're brothers in one sense, but anyway, look, and also really they're not really Muslims either.
Well, they were jailhouse Muslims. That's what said. That's what she mentioned in the show, that they they joined Muslim groups in jail because that's what you do in jail. You know, you don't want to be on your own in jail, so you'll join certain groups, and so that's what Alicia said. She said they were jailhouse Muslims. Yeah.
Well, which Alicia are you talking about? Alicia McWilliams?
Alicia McWilliams. Yeah, she says that in the film. Yeah.
Oh, she's my favorite. But both her and Liz, Alicia was the aunt, Liz is the mother,
right, are
two of the most inspirational people I've ever met in my life.
Alicia has passed away, unfortunately. She was sick.
She passed away, a few months ago. But, you know, I first saw them at a mosque in White Plains just a few days after the arrest. And I was just so impressed by how they both stood up and fought. You know, they didn't wilt. I think most people would have just like faded into catatonia if something like this happened to one of their loved ones, a son or a beloved nephew. A very, very close, tight-knit family. I went to a family reunion with them out in Queens. I've been blessed and privileged to be able to get close to these people, and they're absolutely wonderful people. And Russell, I just want to say something about that book you touted at the beginning. I haven't read it. What was it? Innocence? What was it again?
It's called Actual Innocence.
Actual Innocence. Well, I don't think that in the case of the Newburgh Four, there's innocence in a sense of totally without any guilt or any
but that guilt is just, I mean, whatever guilt you may want to ascribe to them is guilt. You could ascribe some sense of guilt in maybe a moral sense, but legally speaking, if they're entrapped, they get off. So legally speaking, there was no guilt.
You know, it's interesting you say that because by any moral system that I know of, at least, one of the cardinal tenets is that you don't use people as pawns. You don't use human beings as objects, which is exactly what happened to them. So I think morally, there's no question that all of the guilt or the onus is on the FBI and the federal government.
Right.
Now, one could say that, look, they shouldn't have done it. They shouldn't have taken the bait. They're free agency. But as you pointed out correctly, if you want to say that everyone has a price, $250,000.
Well, beyond that, I understand what you're saying, but beyond that, the criteria for entrapment is very, very clear, and this satisfies all three of them. All three of them.
Yeah. Well, no.
So there's no real debate there. I mean, there's no real argument there.
Well, there is some legalistic argument. There almost always is about entrapment versus some other thing that's a very close synonym to entrapment, but isn't quite the same. But one thing that's clear to anyone just using common sense without going into legal language is that these guys should never, ever have gotten the sentence they got. Ever. That's clear and obvious. And by the way, you didn't connect the two judges. That is, the judge in the original trial and the one who let them free. It was the same person. Are you aware of that?
Oh, no, I'm not aware of that. No.
Yeah, no, McMahon was the one who heard it. I was down at the courthouse.
Who handed down the original 25 years, right?
Yes, exactly. And frankly, I was shocked that she did, because I was in that courtroom for quite a few of the hearings, and it was obvious the disdain she had for the government's case, and particularly for.
So then, why did it take her so long?
Well, I don't know. That's what I wanted to mention. That's one of the things I wanted to say, is that there's a lot now to be analyzed and I believe even litigated in terms of getting just compensation for what happened to these four guys. And Russell, I forget. I started talking about the book. I asked you about the name of the book. The reason I did that is there's another book that specifically deals with the terrorist factory. In fact, that's the name of the book, The Terror Factory, by a guy named Aronson. Definitely worth reading. He mentions the Newburgh Four. And, Keats, I call you Keats, Keaton. You know that the pizza shop was in Albany and you were in Newburgh, so you were there for two of the shithead insane's crimes. What a piece of work that guy was. But yeah. But the real problem, as I see it right now, is these guys are going to get out of jail. By the way, they have. It's just an absolute tragedy.
Is his brother doing okay? Because
Well, I'm in touch with Liz. As you know, I spent a great deal of time going around with Liz doing screenings of the Newburgh Sting. As soon as the movie came out,
right.
We did about 20 screenings.
Well, we did one at the theater in Newburgh. We did one at Mark's Theater.
Oh, that's right. We did one there. We did a couple in mosques in Westchester, and with very, very few exceptions, the audience was always flabbergasted.
Yeah.
They were incredible. They said, how the hell did this happen?
No, it radicalized a lot of audience members. I remember your friend Abe, pool room buddy, not a very political guy at all, said at one of the screenings, the government's clearly the terrorist here, not these guys, and he's not even a political guy. Yeah.
Well, in the words of the great Alicia McWilliams, it's political as a motherfucker.
Yeah, she says that in the thing.
She
yeah,
hit it right on the head.
Of course.
And when you want to analyze as to why the jury did this, there's a few things that you have to keep in mind. One is that the courtroom was about 3 miles away from the World Trade Center.
Yep, Lower Manhattan.
And it was still fresh in New Yorkers' mind.
Yep.
There was still a propaganda machine back then about these horrible terrorists threatening to kill us, and people were genuinely scared of this stuff. The case probably, I don't know if, I'm not sure, but I wonder if it would have been in a different venue and certainly at a different time, but
I don't think so. I mean, it's possible. I mean, it was in New York, obviously, which was particularly traumatized because of that. But, this wasn't the only place they did this. They got away with this all over the country. They did this everywhere. They continue to do it. This is why, I said this just a few minutes ago, this is why when they start locking up these January 6th guys 5-6 years, I'm thinking, okay, and we know there were feds in the crowd then. They can make you look as guilty as they want. They can make you look as guilty as they want. And the truth can be the exact opposite. So you always have to, take all these things. You have to look very, very critically at all these things.
Well, that's where the Terror Factory would enlighten you about how many places it took place. So you're right, all over Florida, Fort Dix.
Yeah, all over the place.
No, it happened quite a bit. And I think that from a legal point of view, one of the arguments that I might make, and by the way, there's a lawyer whose name I won't mention, Keaton, but he's a lawyer who's dear and near to both of us. I was speaking with him yesterday.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
And he thinks that there might be a strong case for some kind of compensation. But, I'm certainly far from a lawyer. I'm more, usually I have lawyers trying to get me in trouble.
Yeah.
But my thinking is that we have a 14th Amendment that talks about equal protection under the law, right? Now, as Russell said, this wouldn't have happened in Scarsdale. Well, not for $250,000. It might have been, $7 billion.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Bought them. Well, right. But, okay. It's certainly not equal protection under the law when the government selects people, uses people for their ends. how are they protecting them equally with the people that they're not?
No, of course,
doing
it's a complete violation of basic civil rights. You know, these guys were targeted. There was no existing plot, right? There was nothing. They made this up out of whole cloth. They just made this up from scratch. The guy went in cold. He didn't know anybody at the mosque. Didn't know a single person at the mosque. So he literally went there and created this whole thing. It was a complete fiction from minute one. And so, yeah, of course they should have a case. Of course they should get damages.
I sure hope so.
Which is why I said before you called in that, you know, this is not the last of this story that we'll be covering on this show. We would love to have Liz on. If David wanted to talk to us, we would love to talk to David. I'm not going to ask him that because God knows he's got a million other things on his list of things to do when he gets out before talking to us. But I would, you know, I'd welcome anybody involved with this case to come and talk to us, obviously.
I spoke with Liz about that tonight, about your show, and, you know, she's very enthusiastic about it. But I think you're absolutely right that he will probably need a period of readjustment to settle down, to get, you know, to get his land legs again. Well, anyway, Keith and Russell, thank you so much for doing this. I think it was, you know, extremely important. You know, I tell you, it was shocking to me that people weren't shocked by this when it first came out.
It didn't get as much play as it should have. It didn't get as much play.
Nowhere near as much. And I hope that it does now. I hope that other podcasters, other columnists,
Well, I tweeted at Sabby. Sabby covered it earlier. I tweeted at her last night. Greenwald tweeted out the New York Times link earlier today. So hopefully he does something on it. But, you know, I mean, look, it should get out there absolutely far and wide, especially now that it's so in the cultural discussion about this weaponization of the federal government, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about right now.
Exactly. We're talking about, you know, every time I hear the FBI being excoriated for their shady activities having to do with censorship and a lot of other things, my brain just flips to the Newburgh Four and thinking how, my God, you don't get a more glaring example of the deep state, its intrusion into our personal lives, the manipulation. And by the way, and this is the last thing because I know it's getting late, but there was something particularly upsetting about their choosing a synagogue in Riverdale. Why? Because it was a way of exacerbating tensions between blacks and whites.
And Muslims and Jews. That's what Alicia says in the film.
She says that in the movie.
It was so, everything about this was hideously ugly. And, you know, it needs people like you and a lot more of us to shine a light on it. So thanks again for doing this.
All right, thank you. Go make yourself
listen, what the fuck is with the goddamn backstage bullshit?
Well, I was gonna say, go make yourself. I was gonna say, go make yourself a cup of tea to calm down a little bit. Yeah, you know how that works. You turn the burner on. There's the dial above the stove. You got to turn it on to 6 or 7. Right, and then you know, you pour the water in the pot. Make sure the pot's on the correct burner, because if you put the pot on the wrong burner, it won't get hot.
No, this is a plot, man. They're
trying to... Yeah, right. Yeah. All right.
They're succeeding. Anyway, let me go.
All right.
One quick thing, an observation about some unrelated things that you mentioned earlier about the tide seems to be shifting on opinion about Ukraine.
As
you know, I go out in the street all the time.
Right.
I tell you, I noticed a definite change, a huge change, getting far fewer.
Well, that's it. The moderates are starting to the moderate pivot is indicative of that. All right, go.
Let me let you go.
Yeah,
because I know that it's getting late. All right, thanks for doing this, guys.
All right. Remember, burner at 5. Make sure the pot's on the correct burner.
Listen, this is your fucking.
I don't tutor all the patrons how to work it. They call in and I say you're on and they talk. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you got there. All right, see you later.
All right, I'll let you go. All
right, thanks. Bye.
Oh wow.
All right,
that was awesome.
Yeah. That's what it is. And then I call him and he doesn't answer. I say, all right, I'm going to call you. We'll do it on the phone. Call the voicemail. Yeah.
Yeah, that was. I mean that's very cool. He's worked so hard on this case.
Yeah, he knows them very well. You know, I mean, it's a small enough town. But yeah, no, we know a few people who have been involved with that, who put together protests, you know, when they were being tried and things like that, and after they got convicted. It's interesting. I didn't know when I was doing that rundown that the same judge who freed them was the judge who sentenced them in the first place, which begs the question, why did it take you 14 years? Like, why?
That's a question I had as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, if you knew this was bullshit when it happened, you couldn't have got them out any sooner.
HBO thing came out in 2014. Like
2014.
It was all laid out there.
Yeah, indeed.
Clear enough.
Indeed. Clear enough. Absolutely. All right, folks, we're going to take some super chats, and then we are going to close the lights on this day. This was one of 4 consecutive shows for us. We have a Patreon show tomorrow at 8 p.m. A really, really good one lined up. So if you can join and support us at patreon.com, it really does help us a great deal. So thank you guys very much for that. Ellen says, please, when you're talking about the movie, can you say the name rather than the movie? So the movie is called The Newburgh Sting. Maybe it was a little confusing because The Newburgh Sting is sort of the name of the operation and the name of the film, but it's called The Newburgh Sting. So YouTube, just enter into the YouTube search, The Newburgh Sting movie, and it'll come up. It is on there for now. I don't know if it's owned. I don't know if there's a copyright on it now because HBO doesn't have it. They put all their shit on HBO Max if they have it. And it's not on any other streaming.
They took down a bunch of their content to save money.
Oh, they did? They did?
Yeah,
well, I don't think this
HBO
was ever
Max
on there.
Purged a whole bunch of content off of their platform.
Interesting. Ruthless Criticism, thank you for the $5. You appreciate that. Macron is getting ready to find babies being taken out of incubators by ISIS. Yes, they could be trafficked in order to fund WMD projects in Niger. I haven't heard that. I don't know I don't know anything about that. Are you joking? Or is that real?
That sounds like some Trotsky shit.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you for the $5, though. Appreciate that. Rift Side, thanks for the $5. I honestly didn't know what a Ukraine is. Is it like a U-boat? Interesting. I have a funny play on words there. Oh, this is my dad trying to get in. I'm here. Call me. Have Russell take over for a minute. I want to get on now. We made it happen.
We got it worked out.
I mean, I thought this technology was as simple as could be. I turned it on and you're on. I don't know. Maybe he has to enable the mic settings. Tusker, thank you for the $5 in the attempt to help, do some tech troubleshooting.
She sent me like pictures, but by then,
yeah, you may have to change. Well, I couldn't have walked him through that. I mean, I'd have still been walking him through that. If we had tried.
And I probably would have had an aneurysm.
Yeah, your dad may have to change permissions on his device browser to allow StreamYard to use audio and video. Browser settings. All right, maybe it's browser settings. I'll walk him through it next time for sure. Yeah, Courtney said, you better stop ignoring your dad. I wasn't ignoring him. I was texting back and forth. We're trying to get it hooked up. So glad we finally came up with some kind of makeshift solution. So glad to finally hear Mr. Weiss on the DD show. Indeed, that was fun. And Marilyn Kelly, let's get a singing bowl out for Marilyn Kelly. In Alicia's name, thanks for honoring her. Yes, Alicia, it's very sad that she did not get to see this day, but she did pass away. I don't know exactly how long ago it was. I think it was probably a little less than a year. But thank you for that very generous donation. And like I said, we will cover this story more. Denise Israel, I just signed up a Patreon. I love you guys. Well, we love you too. Thank you so much for that. That's very kind of you. We appreciate that very, very much. Thank you for all your activism around this case for so many years. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And folks, I know I've said this a few times, but this is why, and I've mentioned this in conjunction with the January 6th shit, Look, there's another Newburgh guy who was, I don't know if he was a Proud Boy or an Oath Keeper. He was monitoring Roger Stone on January 6th. He was like Roger Stone's bodyguard on January 6th. And he owned a tattoo shop in Newburgh. And he's getting the book thrown at him now. And I'm not saying the cases are identical or even similar. But when you see the government go after people like this, it's for a reason. The villain du jour, when this case went down, was the Muslim terrorist. The villain du jour today is the insurgent, MAGA, white supremacist,
Exactly.
So they're going to throw their weight at them. And so I think there needs to be unity and resistance to that.
It's an easier target. I mean, it's harder to beat up on black people like that now. Right? It's easier to go after poor. Not then, but
at the
now.
time it was much easier.
So now they shift the target to poor white people, and they can say, "Oh, we're going after them because they're racist bigots."
Right.
Clearly, right. The guy with the Hagar the Horrible hat. He's gonna come with a fucking longboat to take your children.
Exactly. Keaton's Dad Rules weekly show, perhaps. Oh, we got a lot of recommendations here. Your dad is a real mensch, says Dwayne. Courtney, petition for Ben and Weiss to co-host. Thanks for the $2, Courtney. And Cool Blue.
Maybe when I'm in Europe.
Keaton's dad deserves his own show. Well, what my father has told me in the past is that, I mean, look, tonight we were doing a topic that is obviously very, very near and dear to him, that he knows a lot about, that a lot of people don't, including a lot of media people, because he was intimately involved in the defense and the activism around that. But he has told me in the past he would, if he were to do any kind of program himself or even call in, he would do those on the Rumble exclusives, because he mentioned he would get thrown off of YouTube in about 15 minutes if he were to speak regularly. So just to answer those questions. Robert Penner, thank you for the for the $10 that just came in. I met Weiss Sr. at Trump's arraignment protest. Yes, he was there for the cowbell. He wasn't right near you, but he was there that day.
Yeah, I ran into him.
He had a sign impeaching Joe Biden.
He was, you know where I ran into him? Right where I asked the guy, the Latino guy, who said, "Well, if you can prove to me that George Bush committed crimes, maybe on Mars he committed crimes.
If you could prove he did something wrong on Mars, then maybe we should impeach him." Yeah, right, exactly. And then what did you say? If by Mars you mean Iraq, or so the part of Mars called Iraq?
The part of Mars called Iraq. Then,
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. All right, I guess that's everything, folks. Thank you guys very much for being here tonight. Thank you for a great show. I knew this was going to be... Oh, okay, Jake. Thank you, Jake. Good catch. Good catch. How about a round of applause for Jake in the producer's booth here? I should have had... Jake, if you really want to earn your keep, I should have had my dad call you and have you coach him through the StreamYard thing. That would have been... That would have been something. I should have told my dad, hold on, I'm going to have the producer call you. But he spotted a Rumble rant, so thank you. And a member comment. Yes, we got the member comments. So that's all good, Jake. But thanks for spotting this Rumble rant. And by the way, those watching on Rumble, please hit that follow button. We're really trying to build our Rumble audience. The government from Taddy Mason, and thanks for the $2, Taddy Mason. The government could easily do this to white people right now. Yes, well, they did it. That's what we've been saying. Just smear them as bigots. It's not about race so much as using current hysteria to find the targets to exploit. Well, that's exactly right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I said it when we were talking about it. It's going after who won't have the power to fight back. Who do they think doesn't have the connections? Like it's not. That's what I mean. It's not about race per se. It's not that they're getting up in the morning, God, I hate black people, let's go get some black people. It's who can't fight back. Oh, poor black people in Newburgh. They can't fight back. Let's go after them. Let's set them up.
Exactly. Poor black Muslim men 8 years after 9/11. Right. Exactly.
Right. Slam dunk.
Exactly. All right, folks. Well, that is our show for the evening. Thank you very much. It was obviously a show that I was very excited to be able to do. I was very excited at the news. We will have more on this topic, and we will have more on a variety of topics as the week develops. We are excited to host Thomas Frank on Wednesday night. That'll be the next time we see you here on this public channel. Please, if you are not signed up at patreon.com/DueDissidence or DueDissidence.substack.com, please do so. Paid Substack subscribers and Patreon members are going to get a hell of a show tomorrow night. That is going to be an absolute banger. We are really looking forward to that. It's going to be at 8 p.m. on Rumble tomorrow night. Links for that.
Opening the gates of hell.
The gates of hell, indeed. The link for that will go out tomorrow morning. So for those of you who just signed up, because we had a bunch of new signups at Patreon and Substack, the way it works is you will get an email in the morning with the link to watch the show as well as the call-in link. which is very easy to use, right? It's very, very simple and self-explanatory to call in.
It's the best. It's the best call-in.
We have the best call-in system. Yes,
we have the best people calling in.
No one's ever seen anything like it. No one's ever seen anything.
Yeah,
like
we're all
our
talking
call-in
about
system.
it.
Right, everybody's talking about it. All righty, guys. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you all being here very, very much. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to our callers. Thank you here on YouTube. Thank you over on Rumble. Wherever you are, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Patreon members and paid Substack subscribers, we will see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Rumble. Everybody else, we'll see you Tuesday on the Post-Duopoly show on RBN. Back here with Thomas Frank on Wednesday. 4 shows in 4 nights. The marathon began tonight. Thank you for getting us off to a good start.
Now that James Brown's dead, we're the hardest working men in show business.
The hardest working men in show business. Indeed. Thank you guys very much for being here. It was a pleasure. We will see you next time. Until we meet again, please do be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.